We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order, please, this morning. Would everyone please rise for the invocation? I'd like to invite Pastor Matt Lovell from the Oak River Church to please come forward.
Thank you. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful morning. We thank you for your creation. We thank you for this city that you've allowed us to steward your resources with. Pray for these councilmen and women and our mayor. We ask that you'd be with them, give them wisdom and discernment, and help them to serve the people they represent. And we ask that you'd bless this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Councilor Slacker, could you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Councilman McIntosh.
Here.
Councilwoman Martin.
Here.
Councilman Slakta.
Here.
Mayor Nelson.
Here.
Councilman Simmons.
Here.
Councilwoman Simons. Councilman Longcart.
Here.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mayor.
Nicely done. Let's see. We are going. Look at this. No proclamations and presentations. So let's go to public comment on any agenda item, please. That's on any agenda item. Please come forward.
Well, good morning.
Good morning, Martha.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, there's one thing that's not on the agenda I'm going to mention is the clean up Bonita on Saturday, the 23rd, of the banyan tree. I don't know how it got missed for the agenda, but it's very important. We've made a tremendous progress in cleaning up the city in the last 12 years. I also like to thank the community police for the protection they've rendered to the people on Hickory Boulevard. They have there's a crosswalk by Doc's Beach House with flashing lights and everything else. And a couple of weeks ago, they were down there and they wrote 64 warning tickets for people that weren't obeying the law. So let's tighten up, folks. Cafe of Life. Now, if I go to the Cafe of Life, this is on the agenda, I can ask for a food handler's license, a state tax identification number, a workman's compensation withholding number, a Social Security withholding number, a Medicare withholding, unemployment withholding, impact fees, which I understand were like $20,000 or more, property tax, which is every year, health inspection report, and advertising expenses. Now that's a brick and mortar. Now somebody pulls in opens up his trunk and sells pretzels out of his back of his truck, doesn't have to pay any of that. So I'm not in favor of these mobile, if they're mobile, but they're taken away from the people that really pay the bills around here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time on an agenda item, please come forward.
My name is Marietta Bala, and I'm representing the Board of Directors of the Cafe of Life. And we just hope that you will be able to move forward in allowing us to provide a park in Lightner Creek area for the children and the families of that area. We have grown to over 600 volunteers this year from 300. The community seems very much behind us and wants us to happen too. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
My name is Audrey Georges, and I have been a citizen of this community, this caring, loving community for 18, 19 years. I have been a small part of the growth of the Art League. When our community needed people to have art, we as a community stepped forward, a caring community, and provided that. And made some differences in regards to the turtles and all that thing that we had to do, some variances that had to happen. And we did that as a caring community. We also did the same thing when we established Hope Hospice. We as a caring community stood up and met that need. Now today we are asking for Cafe of Life to have the opportunity for people who need to give and share with their brothers to match those who have a need to receive temporary care for food and so forth and social services. I cannot imagine this town defining itself as a caring community and not having the courage to step forward and do this kind of thing. We are really at a watershed moment. By that I mean, we have an opportunity for a group of people who have a history of being able to know how to care and provide this service, and we have a group of people who have a need. We can come together today and vote this in place, and this community will be like a watershed. We will all move forward, and we will never be the same.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm Mike Clevenger, the owner of Farmer Mike's. I just wanted to say this morning that I would be open to changing the days of my application for the farmers markets to Tuesday and Friday,
right.
with the hope that I can still get in the Lions Club market anytime now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Neil Montgomery, and I'm here in regards to item 10B. I was thinking about reading my whole submittal to you, which is,
But you knew I wouldn't let you.
but I knew you wouldn't let me. But I do want to say this. I can synthesize it down to this. It's a matter of integrity. It's a matter of honesty and fair dealing. Every meeting, from the time we met with your staff and every meeting we had with you folks, you all knew exactly what we were doing. You knew it was a permitted use. You said you were going to process our application if it was in before the effective date. We believed you. It looks like we shouldn't have. And it's a sad day when you can't believe your government officials. I read last week, we're in China, they took over somebody's farm because that was what they wanted to do to provide housing for people who lived in the gated communities. And you think, well, that can never happen here. That's exactly what happened here. We had a piece of property with a permitted right. This is a property owner who invested millions and millions and millions of dollars in your community. That school, it's there because they built it. That road that you drive on, that's there because they built it. That landscaping you enjoy, that's there because they built it. And the staff knew, and you knew, it was a permitted use, and you have done everything possible to take away that right. And that's sad because we believed you.
Thank you. Anyone else this time, please come forward on any agenda item. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and go to the consent agenda. Council, is there anything on the consent agenda you would like to pull at this time?
There is. I'd like to pull the one about Farmer Mike.
Okay,
That's
we got.
I.
Okay, which item and number is that? Please? Letter? I?
Farmers Market.
That's the one I just asked.
Number I. Anything else? Would anyone care to pass remain? Move approval of remainder? Is there a second? There's a second. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Okay, Martha, item I.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the pleasure, I called the farmer up early this morning, because they're always up early in the morning, and he answered the phone. And I had a little conversation with him, because we do have other fresh markets in town, and asked if he would be congenial to Tuesday and Friday, and he said, yeah, sure. And so that's why we're here, and I said, well, I'll try to help you get into the Lions Club, too. Because he's our only farmer in town. And that farmer should have a right to sell his goods in town. We have that in our rural agricultural overlay ordinance about wanting to have our people sell their food in our town. So I'll do everything I can. And
Okay.
I'd like to change that to Tuesday and Friday.
Okay, would you like to make that a motion?
I am making that into a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Discussion.
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
go ahead. Yeah.
First, I wanted to say that Farmer Mike, I appreciate your coming forward and saying that you would be willing to work with that. As I think almost everyone here in council knows how hard we worked to create that downtown farmers market, and Mike was one of our first
farmers who was right there with us saying, yes, I believe in your vision for the downtown, and this can be a revitalization tool. And he gave us names of other farmers and vendors to help, and the following that he had and the people that he brought helped make that downtown market a true success. And I want to see what he does succeed, but I have concerns about, two markets obviously competing on Wednesday. I think that the Saturday Lions Club market stands alone. It's so large, and but to have just two true farmers markets being on the Wednesday, obviously it concerned me, because I do want to see him succeed. At the same time, I do have to say that I'm concerned and a little dismayed that the Lions Club could not make room for Mike, being that he is a true Bonita Springs farmer, and he's been here all along. So I hope that can be worked out and resolved. But in the meantime, I would also like to see that we approve the Saturday and then allow him to work with staff to come up with the alternative weekday.
Approve Saturday?
I think Saturdays would be fine.
Okay, and Steve, you have something?
I do. It's related because on another project I've been involved with here in the city, there's a misconception about what we're trying to do. We have a 50-year environmental sustainability plan, and I'm very proud of that. It includes a locally grown food source, so that in 50 years we'll have an opportunity for people to grow their own food. Part of that includes farmers markets, community gardens, and a very small part of that includes backyard hens. So there's a reputation apparently going around through parts of this county that we're going to look like Key West. That is not what this is all about. This is about 25 families having 4 backyard hens in coops above the ground. And the farmers markets are a critical part of our environmental sustainability strategy, and I certainly support that.
Okay, good. Any other comments about the two different proposals? We have
Yeah.
a motion on the floor.
Yes, and I did talk to Mike this morning about it, that Friday and Tuesday would be okay, but I would like to encourage our sustainability man maybe to come and speak to the Lions Club about what it is we're trying, at their board of directors meeting, because you carry a lot of weight there, Doctor, and about what that means to keep our farmers sustained, as well as our community, with growing food locally, saving energy from having to truck it in, and I would welcome you to come next month. Saying it out loud, President Al Greenwood, contact him.
Okay, do we have a staff member who I can drag into this? Hi, I knew that was you. I was just going to see if you would voluntarily get out. So, your thoughts on this?
Farmer Mike did try to get into the Lions Club market first. There wasn't enough room is the answer that he received. They did tell us that they would work him in if there becomes room for him to come. So he wanted to come forward with the private market. According to the ordinance, you can't have 2 private markets. I know he's willing to work into the downtown market if it can be done. Until then, I think it would be nice for him to be able to go ahead and start some type of market, and that way he can still have his goods sold as a farmer's market as well.
And insofar as the days that is, I mean, the proposal that was presented on this agenda sheet was Wednesdays and Saturdays, the
Right.
same days.
That was the first initial thought that he wanted, but it sounds like he's willing to change his days. I think Saturday was important to him. In order to keep a Saturday would be great, and then staff could work with him to find a different day other than Wednesday.
And this location that he's picked, can you kind of explain for everyone who hasn't read this where this location is that he's proposing?
It's Bonita Commons Plaza, which is at 25987 South Tamiami Trail.
Okay.
Are you familiar?
Art, et cetera.
And it's where the big art building used to be.
Figs.
Right.
Figs.
Okay. Good. Okay. And so right now there's a motion on the floor to do Tuesdays and Fridays. Just as a matter of compromise, would anyone have any objection to making that Tuesdays and Saturdays? 'Cause
Well,
you had suggested Saturdays.
Yes. Well, maybe we could hear from Mike about what he wants to do there, and I'm more than happy to squeeze or whatever I have to do to somebody to help him get into the Lions market.
Come on up, Mike.
Bonita's #1 farmer.
Again, I'm not looking to put any more animosity between me and the Lions Club than it's already there. I'd be perfectly happy with Tuesday and Friday, hoping, again, that I can still get back into the Lions Club.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of people that ask for us every weekend. John Eliff told me that himself.
Yeah.
That
Well,
would be fine with me.
I think setting you up possibly the day before the Wednesday market may end up getting you in there on Wednesday.
Hopefully, hopefully.
Okay?
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Mike before I see? All right. All right, there's a motion for Tuesdays and Fridays. Any other discussion about that?
No, if he's okay with that, then.
That's fine?
I'll do what I
Good.
can.
Motion is second to allow Mike to do Tuesdays and Fridays. Roll call, please.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons.
Yay.
Councilman Longcart.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh. Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay. We are on to, that takes care of the consent agenda. We are on to public hearings. And, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm
Audrey.
going to read into the record the first public hearing, and this is an amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 4 zoning, amending Division 37, Subdivision 2, temporary uses, amending Section 4-3041 generally, amending Section 4-3046, temporary use of mobile home, amending Section 4-3047, temporary telephone distribution equipment, and Section 4-3048, ancillary temporary uses in parking lots, creating Subdivision 3, mobile food vendors, creating 4-3061, applicability of division, purpose of intent, 4-3062, definitions, 4-3063, permit required, 4-3064, general standards, 4-3065, prohibited locations, and 4-3066, temporary event use permit, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, Scrivener's errors, inclusion in code, and effective date. This is a second reading, and public comment will be taken at this time as well as the last time. I have reviewed the affidavit of publication, which is on file at the city clerk's office. Alexis Crespo can provide you with a presentation on this, and we do have some minor changes in the ordinance that we can go over now or go over later. Also, in your errata sheet, you received a matrix which was requested by Councilman McIntosh of what different communities do with different hours, and I believe staff, Ms. Crespo, will be able to talk to you about maximum duration and hours of operation based on
Okay.
that matrix.
Alexis, you want to come up and give us a little presentation here?
Good morning. For the record, Alexis Crespo with Waldrop Engineering. As we left it at after the first reading, there was several items to clear up at today's hearing. First of all, being adding residential uses to that 500-foot radius, and also allowing a letter of no objection if that was going to be reduced for any reason. And that has been included in your ordinance on page 9. The other major item was duration of the use. As proposed, it's 5 days in one location per week. And it was the council's feeling that that was a lengthy amount of time for what is really intended to be a temporary mobile use. The matrix I've provided has lots of different examples from across the country. And there's a direct correlation between the duration in one location and how many locations these vendors are allowed to permit within. For example, New Orleans has to move every 30 minutes, those vendors. However, they're allowed unlimited numbers of locations so that they can constantly be in operation. Therefore, based on the matrix, I would recommend that the council move forward with a 3-day maximum duration per location and maintain the 2 locations per permit. Unless you'd like to increase the total available locations they can vend in within their permit.
Okay, so it's the 3-day maximum per location, the 2 locations permitted.
Correct, so they could be vending 6 days per week.
Okay.
In those locations.
Now, within that permit, within that permit, are they allowed to revise that if one location doesn't work out for them? Are they allowed to come in and switch in between times, or once they have their permit, they're nailed down to that?
I don't believe that's directly spoken to within this ordinance, but I would certainly recommend language being added that they could modify or amend their permit as needed if a location no longer worked for them.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Carry on. Sorry.
Good question.
And with that, I believe on page 8 of 11, just a couple of housekeeping items, if you'll go to section 4-3064, general standards. Item 3 states that mobile food vehicles or carts that are not self-sufficient cannot remain overnight. I believe it is the intent of this council that you would like no mobile food vendors remaining overnight. So in order to meet that intent, I would recommend striking from that text that the self-sufficient may remain overnight. So basically deleting that is not self-sufficient, receives food from the commissary as defined, must physically be moved at least daily to the commissary for supplies, cleaning, and servicing, cannot remain.
Okay, Audrey, do you have something
May I
to add?
make a suggestion on that change? First of all, we're on page 8, 4-3064, number A3. And what we would delete out is just the words, that is not self-sufficient, receives food from the commissary as defined, so that mobile food vehicles or carts must physically be moved at least daily, and cannot remain, and just
Yeah.
delete the commissary discussion.
So the language would read, the mobile food vehicle or cart cannot remain in a permitted vending
Must
location.
physically be moved at least daily and cannot remain. And then the rest of the sentence. Does that sound good?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes it mobile, right? All right, good.
Correct.
And then changing it, I believe, to 8 o'clock on number 4 and 3 days a week? Is that your recommendation?
That would be my recommendation to council, yes.
So the next item, underneath 4-3064, subsection 4, maximum duration. The recommendation is change it from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, beginning at 8 a.m. That's based on the matrix. Is that what council would like?
Right, beginning at 8, it goes 8 to 9, right?
Correct.
I don't have
All
breakfast
right, 8 to
breakfast.
9 in two places. Council, or kind of a head nod, or is she going in the right direction? Good?
Well, if somebody's doing breakfast, why wouldn't they want to start at 7?
What?
Breakfast, 7.
Uh,
You know, they're doing biscuits and whatever, sausage or something for the people going to work.
You could certainly
Coffee and
start
Danish.
earlier. There are communities that start as early as 6 a.m. with their mobile food vendors, so 7 would not be inconsistent with what other municipalities have done.
And it wouldn't be inconsistent with what our other business operations are either for standalone.
We do noise at 7, so we allow construction.
yeah, the noise ordinance starts at 7, right?
Right.
Yeah, it needs to be that, well, they can't start setting up until 7. That's just that's it. And so this doesn't really address when they start setting up. This is when they can operate, right?
It's actually their beginning date, so it's the time we start the clock.
Right.
the week.
In other words, we're regulating the time they can be there, right?
Pull into the spot.
So they pull into the spot at 7 o'clock. I think that's fine. But if they start earlier than that, I think it's going to end up being a problem.
The language says limited in operation from currently 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., so the operations would be limited by the time frame.
Okay, could we refine what's operation means? I mean, I have no problem, if council has no problem with 7 o'clock, as long as that they get to the site no earlier than 7 o'clock. And if they're
That is a
open at 7, then fine, and if it takes them an hour to get ready, then that's fine.
On site from 7 to 9 or
On
whatever.
site, they can't, yeah, because then,
We use those words, on site from 7 to 9 or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
yeah, somehow, that would be great. Council, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Got it?
Yes, and
Good.
the
Anything else?
the last item was the color palette. Some alternative language was requested. As it currently reads, it must meet the old 41 color palette. I prepared an alternative. Yes, please.
Great.
And the thought there, if the mobile food vendors are not permitted in Old 41, it seems a rigid standard to require them to meet the 41 color standards.
Oh, if they're not, yeah, okay.
Right, that's fine. It should be brown and gray anyhow, so. Thank you so much.
Okay, do you want to read what's?
I'll read
for
into the
audience?
record the proposed language. Exterior colors, neon and fluorescent colors are prohibited. The use of black paint is limited to trim. Where bright saturated colors are utilized, the contrasting accent colors for trims, awnings, or other features are limited to not more than 10% of the total area for any single facade. So that would allow for those a red Oscar Mayer type mobile food vendor, but not getting in too many colors on a single facade, and limiting those really more obnoxious, bright neon colors.
Yeah, Council, I know we can probably do this, but I started thinking about, guess what we're doing? We're telling people what color they can paint their vehicles?
And advertise.
Well, this is fairly lenient. It just would prevent like a neon yellow, multicolored vehicle from being in place. This was prevailing language from most of the examples we looked at from across the state, yes. And provides some guidance so you couldn't have a solid black vehicle, which could be seen as
What you don't want is a
unsightly.
moving sign situation.
Sure.
Really?
No.
Why don't we just stick with A then instead of AB?
Council, any thoughts on this? Any preferences? I have no objection to this. It just strikes me as a little, I don't know.
Well, without any exterior color regulations, you could have a tie-dyed mobile food vendor, which some people may like.
Well, you could have a tie-dye car, couldn't you?
You could, yes, absolutely.
Mary Kay might be out of business. We didn't
And
like
I'm-
colors.
As a marine contractor, I could have all my trucks colored whatever I wanted to, right? Have those wraps on them and be a tiger or something. Wait a minute.
To
That's
the
a good
extent
idea.
that this
No, I'm just trying to get at it. I mean,
Right.
we're focusing on this, I guess, because they're sitting in one place.
Well,
for a
that's
while.
exactly
But
the-
then
the
again,
point. If they're
a lot of
gonna be
people's
truly
vehicles
mobile-
sit in one place for a long time. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know.
Right. If you're
Carl,
forcing
do you
them
have
to
any- you
move
got
more
anything on this? You got any
frequently,
thoughts on
then
this?
I like
Yeah,
it.
I'm like, look, I'm on.
Well, I hear what the council's saying, and I can
No, it's
appreciate
actually
that.
me.
We just
I agree with you, Mayor.
okay. I hear what a couple of you are saying. Okay. Really, maybe to strike a balance here, I think it's already been suggested. What if we just look at A, and then scratch B?
Yeah.
So we're putting something in place, but not heavy-handedly. I don't know.
I would support that.
Alexis, what do you think about that?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Just A is fine,
That's
Council?
fine. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Do you want, we have the exterior color language, and I'm going to be substituting the language. Do you want to still keep trim for doors, should be limited,
No.
it shouldn't be more than 15% of the
That would be in B.
facade?
Yeah.
Or that all mobile food vehicles and cars shall be of uniform facade and trim color.
Now, let's just keep it A
Yeah,
and,
keep it A,
and
I just don't want to delete
Chris is
stuff
gonna
I
have a
don't
hard
want.
enough time chasing vehicles around trying to figure out what color they're painted. Right, Chris? Chris is like me.
He's colorblind.
Well,
Yeah, me too.
And Ben,
Yes?
Mayor, while we're at it, I mean, would you just want to include some neon at like up to 10%? If it's an accent or something?
Maybe we should just go with what's on there.
Yeah?
Right,
Okay.
right here. And
Okay.
let's give it a try. See if someone pops up and,
Complains at us.
yeah. Can always change it.
The neon tiger.
Anything else?
That concludes the comments we received from our first reading, so that was all we had for you today.
All right. Council, before we go to public comment, are there any questions or comments? Bill, what you got?
Alexis, is the 500 feet from a residential in the new proposal?
It's in there.
Yes, it has been,
I put that in after the last meeting, sir.
it's on page 9 of the ordinance.
And one other question, which is completely away from it. Other than Al Greenwood, have any other people that have a building commented, suggested anything in terms of these vendors coming in, of all the ones on Old 41?
I would defer to city staff for that question.
I think the question is, have we heard any other complaints other than Al Greenwood?
Sorry,
Is that the
complaints,
question?
but
Comments.
Yeah.
comments.
I think the answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go to public comment. Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you.
If we need you, we'll call you back up there. Anyone wishing to speak to this, please come forward.
Yes, Rick Steinmeier, is there are the licensings as far as the food handler's license and all these other licenses that I'm sure Lori and Ben are familiar with running a restaurant? Are they required, if I go to a mobile thing, can I ask to see the food handler's license? Is this addressed in this ordinance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Please come forward to this item. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Audrey, in answer to Rick's question, the licensing, someone who goes into this business, the city doesn't, explain the licensing procedure.
City doesn't regulate it. That's done by the state of Florida. Whether it's posted or not, like a hairdresser, I know when you go to a barber or hairdresser, a lot of regulated entities do have to have their license posted. I'm not sure specifically about this.
Yeah, our licensing is limited to what's in this ordinance.
Correct.
Insofar as food safety and that other stuff, not our job, right?
Right. I mean, that's a whole this is about the movement, the
Exactly.
physical location of these, as far as its actual operation, as far as, what kind of food they can serve, how they serve it. That's really up to the state of Florida.
And when they come in for this permit, are they required,
Show.
like in other instances and other permits, are they required to show that they have the other actual permits?
Yes.
Yes, so before we can give them a license to drive around, that's a good idea, right?
Yes, and to answer Rick's question even better, Alexis just pointed out to me, it is very specific that they have to attach their permits to the wall.
So they have to show them right there. Okay, good, very good. Council, what's your pleasure? Would you like to go ahead and go forward with this?
Move.
That's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any other comment? Roll call, please.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons.
Aye.
Councilman Longcart.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Councilman Slackton.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, item B, Audrey, what do you got?
1 second, please.
Nope, right now.
I apologize.
I'm
I have too many
teasing.
documents in front of me. Thank you. This is an administrative code. I'm requesting that you adopt a resolution to amend an administrative code for advisory boards. The code in front of you is an existing code that we have made some modifications. 06-76 is the original, actually, that wasn't the original date, that was the last amendment to the code. This code has several amendments added to it. I believe they're all listed in the green sheet. If you want me to go through it, I can.
Now, your purpose for doing this is just to bring some uniformity to all of them, because we've
Correct.
got kind of a hodgepodge of different,
There's some hodgepodge. This really makes it very clear. The mayor will be appointing the chair to all boards, and that's an annual event, is one change. Make it clear that the code applies not just to their appointment, and this is sometimes referred to as the appointment to advisory board, but it's more globally an advisory board document where they do have their resolutions, they do have their ordinances. There's some term times that have been placed in there. There is a suspension process so that in the event you have somebody getting out of hand, we had that in prior government I worked with, have not seen it here fortunately. Clarified the state laws to financial interests to just make sure people follow the ethics rules that are required by the state. Having an optional item to allow term limits by council. If council wants to put term limits on advisory boards, they have the ability to do so. They're not required to do so. Having an appointment date, revising the television from Channel 12, which was, shows how old the code is, because I believe it's been Channel 98 for about 5 years, 10, for a while now. Changing gender so that it's gender neutral, and making it very clear that it's the city clerk who's responsible for appointees and vacancies.
okay, good. Council, you have any questions about this? Comments? Go ahead.
I do. I guess I wonder why we put that, why we have the mayor pick the chairman when, no offense to anybody on this dais, but I don't think most of us get to all the meetings or see everything. Why wouldn't we allow the committee itself to pick a chair?
Well, there are several reasons. Would you like to keep me out of the fray here?
Sure. It's a council decision that council decided, I think in 2000 or 2001, very early on for some of the boards, because they felt that certain committee members made better chairs than other committee members, and did that with the LPA and did that with zoning board. So that's always been, it hasn't always been the practice. It's been the practice since the first year or second year.
Well, as to the why, I can tell you why.
I'm
right?
ready.
All right. The reason being is that it's not just me. It's me making the recommendation, council voting for it. And what it does, it allows us to go ahead, and if somebody is doing a great job and they're running the meeting really efficiently and everything like that, it gives us the opportunity to go ahead and keep them on for another year, or to go ahead and be sure that if there are other people that are willing or ready, it allows us to go ahead and recycle that. The committee actually appoints the vice chairperson, and they are generally somebody who is capable and able to come in behind the line. And so most of the time, that is the person, that's kind of the heir apparent, the next person that is usually picked in most cases. And sometimes it's not. So I think that's basically it. It's a way for us to be sure that if it's operating, what I do is I talk to staff, I call the individual board members, I call them all up, I ask them, how's it going, what's going on, who do you think is ready to go up there, and I take all that into consideration, call every one of them usually, and to find out what's going on, and then that's the person that comes up. And that way, it keeps the little politics that may be happening within that board there out of the fray. So I think it's worked pretty well so far.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't work.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
just- I'm
That's the
saying-
reason.
And I don't manage your time, but I know how busy you are, and I'm just thinking that the committee probably knows more about what's going on locally and in that meeting than we do.
Yeah.
But while we're on the topic, we've really danced around this whole issue of when there's a vacancy, is it going to come out of the district that the person left, or is it going to be the most qualified person on, in case that person isn't the most qualified, is going to be the most qualified person. At some point, we really need to come to grips with that whole issue.
Right.
And I don't think this is the time, but we got to keep it in front of us.
Good.
In my
And-
opinion.
And we may open that little surprise bag again.
Well, actually,
someday.
there is some clarification language in there, whether it works or not, that might be philosophical amongst the council, but in Rule 5.01 on page 5,
Yep.
we have the council member, and it's now in parentheses, or if no longer in office, the council member holding the seat, so that it's very clear delineation that that's the person who will be asked. We took out the word pulled, if the existing person should be reappointed. Now, it still goes back to council.
Well, that's my whole point. And we'll get 5 or 6 folks who are interested in a position like that, and we go back to the district person, or in my case, if it's a District 1, they ask me first, and I may not have someone from the district who's really the best. So it puts us under some pressure a lot of times to bring someone in from our district if we have someone who's interested in a position and they live in the district. Then they're going to come to us and say, I want that position, and they may not be the best qualified. I'm asking the council to think about how you get the most qualified people on those committees instead of an older system that we have.
Okay.
And I don't want to do it today.
Oh, good. I mean, okay. Martha.
Yeah, but I am going to bring it up because.
Don't do that.
Ooh, just real quick. Because when you say in that section 5, the council member who recommended, there's been a problem because looking exactly to your point, I can recommend somebody being the voice of District 5, but I've recommended people who don't live in District 5. So what it does is it gives representation to that district that you pick the person you think is best that reflects the interest of your district. But, I've picked people from District 4 and 1 and whatever. It doesn't matter that they live there. I think we understand that. But when we report them, let's report it, like you said, about what council member, if there was one, and then again, we also defer to the person who's the liaison to the committee, like the Historic Preservation Board or the Tree Board. Councilwoman Martin will recommend somebody because she's in touch with the members there of that board. So you're right, we need to kind of straighten it out. But I do like, there is wisdom in having different voices throughout the city represented in making recommendations. And that's all I have to say.
Good. For now, on that particular issue, why don't we just go ahead and leave it messed up? That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
See?
Well, we currently do that. We
Yes.
have a list of who made the appointment, and I know that Martha and I believe Janet, you've both made appointments of someone who's not in your district. And we do have that noted, and I think I've forwarded those lists to you in the past, but I could send that to you again if you like.
No, I think it's just a matter of just organizationally, when you send
Okay.
something out, okay, here's the person who gets the first, shot at making this making this, wait, but,
I've just noticed that they're listed as where they live, not by who appointed.
No, I
Because in
have
the
that
last
she has them
one,
as
Yeah.
appointees.
well,
I have that as where, yeah.
the last
I'll
one,
send
I
that to you.
appointed somebody and it was listed as a District 4 appointment, and he wasn't in 4, he's in 5.
Right, but it
I
was
mean, I
noted
5
that you
appointed
made
him,
the
but he lives in
appointment.
4. Okay, that's it,
Yeah.
thanks.
All right, well, like I said, okay, there we go.
The mess.
All right, but towards the remainder, is anybody have any other questions or comments about the remainder, or do you wish to go ahead and approve it?
So move.
Make a motion to approve as Audrey has read. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other discussion? There's no public comment on this, right?
Yes, there is.
There is? Well, then here we go. Anyone wishing to speak this matter, please come forward. And it's about the resolution administrative code for advisory boards. No? Nothing? Okay, good. Public comment is ended and roll call.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slackton?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye. Okay, good. What do you got next?
Next is the tree bank program. Joe will begin, or I guess Arlene will begin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It was brought to our attention by some of our older communities and that there has been some landscaping issues with trees.
Can you speak in the microphone a little
Oh,
bit?
sorry.
All right.
It was brought to our attention, and we brought it to the Tree Advisory Board, that there are some older communities that have some issues with their trees. In the past, they were planted and now they've grown too close together and they're causing some utility issues. Currently, these homeowners associations have to go through individual tree removal permits through community development. We wanted to help streamline this process, and this program will set up a process so that a community could get approval from community development to start reviewing their own trees in their own community and decide which trees are becoming a nuisance or a problem and which trees can just be trimmed or maintained. The other benefit that arises from this is that in this process, these communities can make a contribution to a tree bank. So instead of replanting a tree on a property where it's too confined to actually allow that tree to grow to its maximum potential, a tree can be placed somewhere else in the city. So the city is still getting the benefit of the total number of trees. It's just that we would be placing those trees either in medians or parks or other locations that there is a need. A second benefit that came out of this is while we were discussing this process and we had other applicants coming forward for commercial uses, it was determined that some of these sites that they were developing had more trees than were required by the Land Development Code. And so requiring further plantings on that site may not have necessarily been beneficial. Those in this creation of this program, those commercial developments can then pay into the tree bank as well. So that's they're still going through their normal process of going through community development, receiving their development order, but it's been determined that the development order trees that are required for that site are in excess, and those trees can be planted in other locations as deemed appropriate. So we really want to thank the Tree Advisory Board. They've been working on this process for a while, and it was we were finally able to work through the program. We also want to thank our neighborhoods who contributed their comments to the process as well. And former council member Spear was very influential in bringing this to our attention and helping us get this program moving forward.
Okay. Questions for Arlene? Anyone? Yes, Martha.
What would preclude them from cutting down a heritage tree? Is there any review by the tree board?
There is review by the tree board. This is not for removal of heritage trees. These are trees that are within their community that are in excess. There is criteria that they have to follow before they can remove a tree, and it does not include heritage trees. Additionally, the homeowner association has to go through a process. They'll be working with training with Mike Kirby, so they'll learn what's appropriate and what's not. At the end of quarterly, they will be reporting back to community development on what the number of trees they removed.
Yeah, can I ask, could we include this, they will also get a preliminary fertilizer education? Because this would be an excellent opportunity to distribute that information to all our homeowners associations so that they comply with it. Just, a simple line about, with Mike Kirby's help or our staff's help, they will receive education about trees and proper fertilization in accordance with our city fertilization ordinance. We do that? Well, it's a way to disseminate the information, Ben.
Well, it is, but this may not be the proper vehicle for it. You may want to try to do it in some other manner.
Well, it's just an opportunity if we're talking to the people in the homeowners associations that they can disseminate that. It's pretty simple, it's just a little pamphlet.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not asking for anything complicated.
Just to clarify, I wanted to let you know on page 4 of 6, under C number 4, the removal of any heritage tree / pine or live oak 20-inch in diameter or greater is not part of this program. So heritage trees are not permitted to be used in the program.
Okay, and just for clarification, somebody has some trees that are bugging them. They're cracking their sidewalks, they're doing whatever. There's criteria set up for that. But they still have to come to Mike or the tree board. They can't just do it.
They're going to receive training in the process. They're going to learn what's appropriate removal of trees, and then
Right.
they'll be coordinating with Mike of when they remove the trees. But they're going to be actually reviewing which trees are going to be removed. They're going to be bringing that through their homeowners association, and then they're going to be making the final recommendation to remove the tree,
Okay.
and then reporting back to Mike Kirby. So there'll be monitoring going on
So
along
they
the
report
process.
after the trees are removed and they've done this, they report back to Mike, or they report to Mike before they do it?
In the beginning,
Delegated the
we're
authority.
delegating the authority to them to permit them to move forward with the removal of the trees.
All right, let me try to explain it a little bit. They will not have to, currently what's happened is people would have to go in and get a modification to their landscape plan before going forward. So you would have a delay. Mr. Kirby would have to take a look at their landscape plan, go do site visits, check everything. This allows a delegated authority, it's a limited authority, where they still have to turn in a landscape plan showing what they're doing, but then they can do the removal ahead of time as opposed to having to wait for Mr. Kirby to sign off on it. Heritage trees are not on it. They are still required under the fertilizer ordinance to follow with the fertilizer ordinance, and it doesn't allow them any limitations that are already in Chapter 3. So, Chapter 3 is our landscape code, I'm sorry. So they would still have to comply with those
Yes,
requirements.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, that's true, but they don't know about it. So it'd just be an opportunity to disseminate that information. That's all I'm asking, that we submit it to the HOA.
Before we start talking about fertilizer, let's go ahead and finish talking about the.
Yeah, well, it's part of landscaping.
Now,
so.
we're going to talk about the cutting of the trees down
Yes,
first, okay?
sure.
And then we'll talk about the fertilizer afterwards. So anybody going to chime in on this?
I'd like to chime in.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm very happy with the circumstances that I have at Worthington Country Club and how we handle the trees, the grass, the fertilizer. We follow the rules, and we are monitored in many ways, not only by staff, but by people that live in the actual houses. And I think that any of the gated communities that I've ever been in certainly take care of everything that this has to be done in a very efficient manner, and I don't want that to change because they do a great job. And I'm all for making sure that there are trees replaced when it's necessary and make them more attractive so that we are able to increase our value of our homes, and it's a good thing. And I think the idea that's been presented is very rational, reasonable, and I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does this have anything to do with commercial at all, commercial establishments?
No, the only benefit to commercial establishments is if they have gone through their regular permitting process, they come to the tree advisory board and it's determined that there are too many trees on the site, they will be given the opportunity to pay into the tree mitigation bank instead of planting additional trees on their commercial property.
But so far as the removal of the trees?
No,
and
they
that-
cannot, no, this is not a delegation
Good.
program
Just
for,
wanted-
it's only solely residential.
On that on the record. Okay, council? Any other comments before we go to public comment? All right. Thank you very much. We'll call you back up in a minute. Any public comment on this? Please come forward.
Hey, Rick Steinmeier. There was a case where there was a live oak planted by one of the churches, and they put a thrift store in, and this live oak tree was blocking their sign for the thrift store. Well, I don't know if it's still in existence, Lee County had a $100 fine for removing this tree. So they decided, well, we'll transplant it and give it to the city, and they transplanted it down into Beach Park North, which I remember the mayor, he wasn't the mayor then, but he drove by and I was watering it for Bob Wagner, and I said, "Hey, a live oak," and Ben says, "Not for long." I mean, the roots were 6 inches, cut off at 6, 8 inches thick. It was not going to live. But that way they avoided the fine from Lee County. Now, I don't know whether that fine is still in existence with Lee County or not, but I think it's pertinent to this situation. Another place, Sea Isles, which was 35 years old now, they planted trees, and now they're blocking people's view, and they want to take them out. And so they decide, well, this year we'll cut one down, we'll pay the fine, and next year we'll cut another one down and pay the fine, which is the letter of the law, but it's not right. So I don't know if that's part of the problem.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Yes, Henry Style, live in the villages of Bonita off Old 41. I've had comments or denied taking trees down off of community property. I have live oaks there that are planted 15 feet apart, that are tearing up the sidewalks, the roads, and everything, but the city has not allowed us, in fact, denied us from removing those trees. And I didn't know anything about this tree committee, but I don't know why live oaks are so mysterious down here that you can't cut them down, especially when the developer put them in too close together to begin with, too close to the roads and the sidewalks. That now my development is paying extra to take up driveways and take up sidewalks and replace them at a cost, I can tell you, $5,000 for the first turnaround, and I've got more of those that had to be done. So this needs to be looked at a little bit closer than what you're doing now, and put some of these trees in that's not supposed to be removed. I'm sorry about that, but they need to be removed, or it's a big cost to the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward. Okay, Carl.
Mr. Mayor, especially as it regards the last speaker, this program's in place to take care of exactly the same concerns that he just raised. That these communities are such that they have residents in them, they typically have staff management in them that are going to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. And so that's why we think, number one, delegating some of that decision-making authority to those local communities makes sense here. But also, yes, this all started with the concerns that too many oaks were put in place too close together, creating problems not only with sidewalks, but with underground utilities, all kinds of different things. And so this actually will go a long way to resolving some of those issues that have been raised.
Okay, good. Council, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to move it.
Make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mike, could you come up here? I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question.
I'd like to ask about live oaks.
You can't wait. I know. I understand what's behind this. I'm not going to vote against it, that's for sure. But I just want to kind of raise one kind of a thing. So far as the delegation to a particular organization or subdivision, because they have actual staff and they have people that can take care of it as a homeowners association, would you be willing to delegate the same responsibility to condominiums on the beach so far as the lights, so far as they affect turtles?
Mm.
And now you can sit down. Okay?
That was an answer.
May I ask Mike a question?
Okay. Anyway, there you go. Would you like to ask Mike a question?
I did want to ask Mike. Mike, don't sit down yet. Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate it. I just want to ask two things. One, are live oaks protected under Florida law?
No,
I always
people
heard
have
that.
misconceptions. Most trees have the same protection. It's usually the wetlands that are protected, and they associate, cypress are associated with wetlands or live oaks are associated with this. It's just usually either trees in general or the area that's protected.
So this ordinance will allow like a more compatible tree that will have a growth pattern that will work for the residents if they want to replace?
Yes.
Okay, great. And the other thing is there a problem with distributing fertilizer information? Knew I'd get that in there. So that our HOAs know what the ordinance is and will comply?
Well, when
And
we give them their
purpose.
package, we're going to set up an administrative form and all. It could certainly be just a part of the package they receive when they receive our delegation from us.
Yeah. Okay, that would be good, maybe a little discussion, just so that they can inform their homeowners, and then we can save a lot more money not polluting our waters. Awesome. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Staff, you got anything else before we do this? Okay, roll call.
Councilwoman Simons?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Okay, that was fun. All right, what do we got next there, Audrey?
Next, we have, 1 second. Again. It's a double motion. This is to approve a conveyance of land from Lee County for Leitner Neighborhood Park and second reading of the following ordinance. This is an ordinance authorizing a lease agreement for the use of a portion of land owned by the city of Bonita Springs for a park facility. Lessee is Cafe of Life, authorizing the mayor and city officials to have executed said agreements and providing for an effective date. This is a second reading. Public hearing will be taken at this time. I reviewed the affidavit of publication, and it is legally sufficient and on file with the city clerk.
Okay, good. Council, does anyone have any, before I go to public comment, which I'm going to real quick here, does anybody have any comments or questions for staff regarding this proposal? No? Okay, at this time, we'll go to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to this item, please come forward. It's in regard to the Cafe of Life, Leitner Creek proposal.
Rick Steimer again. Is this park going to be accessible through the Maywood property? I don't know if the councilman, Janet Martin, could address that they come through the Maywood, that they don't have to walk from Old 41 all the way through the
Absolutely.
neighborhood. Is that legal? Is it going to be available in the future? Thank you.
Okay. Any other person like to speak this time? Please come forward. Seeing none. Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, one of my concerns has been about food handling, and we just passed a mobile food vendor, making sure everybody gets their, and I've talked to the city attorney about this, about what is required and not required for an organization of this type to have food handling certifications. I would like to know that some of the volunteers are certified food handlers. That would be important for the health and safety of their clients. So, if not all of them, maybe if maybe they already have done that, I don't know. But if it's not very expensive, it takes a few hours, and the training's very easy to do, but that we could require that there's always some volunteers, a certain number. I don't know what council would want to do, if they even want to do that, would be required to have food handling education.
Okay. Are you asking a particular question to somebody?
Well, I mean, temperature, safety, it's a safety concern, about food. You're giving food out to the public, you want that to be safe. Now, I'm not saying it's not, but it is we're requiring it of commercial businesses, and even more the nonprofit commissaries like the Legion and the VFW and the Eagles and the Lions. They have to go above and beyond the standard, and we're not asking any requirement here. So, because they're distributing food and we're leasing on our city property, even though we're indemnified, I guess, we won't have a liability issue, but just food safety issue.
So Audrey, when it comes to the city, inflicting food safety parameters on other organizations, agencies, or anything like that, is that within our venue? Is that something we should stay away from? Your legal opinion on that?
My legal opinion is that's a state agency requirement, whether they need to, there's a definition for public food service establishment. And that definition, there is a loophole for churches, for nonprofit associations, so that volunteers are able to do things. What I understand Councilmember Simons is asking is, even though there's the loophole, have a requirement in the lease so that at least one person on site who is monitoring or supervising the volunteers has gone through minimum training. I'm not familiar. It's been many years since I worked in a restaurant. I know my son recently went through some food service training when he was working at a local restaurant. I don't know. I know that was done by his restaurant. I don't know if there is some of that open to the public. I'm seeing Councilmember Simon says it is, but I don't know if it is or isn't. My preference would be not to add that to the lease, but have it as a commitment by Cafe of Life if they think that they need to provide that commitment.
Okay, yep. I would have to agree. Doesn't seem like something that you would put in a lease. But anyway, I'm gonna go, Steve.
Yes.
Yes, my question, what do they have now when they're serving food?
They have volunteers, and the volunteers are excluded under the state law, so they're able to prepare. I'll give an example. They can prepare food in a kitchen, a regular kitchen rather than a catering kitchen. So the kitchen, may have a television on, may have a kid walk through it, may have, hopefully they wash their hands after, But I mean, it's a regular kitchen. It's not being aluminum or stainless steel where people are being trained to work in a commissary.
Audrey, is the law define whether you're selling something versus donating it?
It's actually done based on who is serving it, and there is an exemption, and it's listed on page 5 of the license. Any eating place maintained or operated by a church or religious, nonprofit, fraternal, or nonprofit civic organization for the use of its members and associates. And the way they've defined associates could be anybody coming to that facility, no different than if I was working at my synagogue in the kitchen and preparing food that the public came, to partake in that given day.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Any other thing? Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, when all that bylaws hubbub came up, I read them. They don't have members. It says under their bylaws they have no members in their organization, which they do, obviously, because they have a board of directors. You have to be a member to be on their board. So, but they say they don't have any members for the purposes of incorporation. I don't want to get... I just think food safety is really important if you're going to serve your clients, and it's not an over-the-top kind of requirement. It's actually very enlightening and probably be very helpful for them.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have to
Thank
say.
you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other comment from the council person? No? All right, we're going to go for roll call. Roll call, please.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin? No. Councilman Slakta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons?
No.
Okay, this passes. And do you have any other, so far as any other agreements or any other work that you need to do with this?
No, I do need to let the county know, and make sure you understand the motion applies to both. for the
Motion
land
applies to
as
both.
well as the
Motion and
license.
seconder, or you both understand it, right?
It was the land and the lease.
Exactly.
Both.
Yep.
Okay, 2 and 1. All right, thank you very much. And Audrey, do you have anything else for us?
Not at this moment.
Okay, at this time, we'll go to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any old little thing, what you ever comes to your head, pretty much. Come on up.
Jay Aaron, a resident of Southern Pines. It's been 22 months since we came before you with this proposal for a park and a home for the Cafe of Life. Particularly want to thank the council, particularly the staff, both the present manager and the previous manager for their assistance. And I assure you that it's going to be a piece of property that you'll be very proud to have in the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this time, please come forward on any issue. Seeing none, let's go ahead and, it's an Audrey show today. We're going to go to the city attorney's report. Okay. And there will be no public comment taken on these items.
Okay, the first item is, we have a proposal in front of you by Hastings Investments to create Osprey Garden Park, and that's located at 276, or next to the property at 27675 Hickory Boulevard. If you could take a look at the license, and if you do think it's sufficient, we'll schedule it for public hearings. I have what council pointed out in the last hearing we did October 17th. We talked about this. And I went through the minutes, and you can see there's about 10 different things that council asked. I formulated a license. We met with the owner and his representative, John Gucciardo, Nicole Perino, and I made the document. He has asked for some changes to it. His first one is he wants to remove any reference to the kayak rest area. And his position is that city council can always terminate the license after a while if it desires to create a kayak rest area. But at this point, it's not practical because there is no vehicular parking drop-off area. I mean, it is good for people who are coming to, I guess, by water, but otherwise it's not. He did say that if the city removes the kayak rest area, he'll give the city $25,000 in lieu of doing a security deposit. So it's just a fixed amount. The city will receive this prior to development order. And he did ask because he is spending about $160,000 to do, I guess the quote that he received to do these, the landscaping that he desires to do and all the hardscaping. He did ask for 25 years with renewals rather than a 5-year term. I want to remind you, Island Place is on a plat of Bonita Beach First Edition. It is marked as a public access, so city council does not own this property in the traditional sense of like owning property, purchasing it, but you have the right to, it's dedicated to the public forever unless you decided to do something else with it, such as vacate it. This is one way to take a public access. You're not compelled when somebody does a dedication to accept it. If you go forward, you would be accepting it, but having it so that somebody would be making it pretty, but still providing that public access forever. So that's pretty much it.
All right, staff or council, you have any questions? Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Can I make comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would support his recommendation to eliminate the kayak because, and by the way, Audrey, ex parte, I spoke with Neil Arnell and Winston. So my concern is that piece of property across from Neil's house is really quite unique. And to think that this individual would give that much money to beautify it, because right now it does not look very nice. And the concern that I have, having walked that area many times, a lot of people really appreciate it. I know down at the north end there was a bench, and once in a while my soul would get a little loose, and I'd have to take my sneak off, and just so nice to have a bench. And he's willing to put I think 3 benches there, something like that, which is really, really nice for people to stop and just enjoy the beauty of the location. I really don't want to commercialize it. It's not what it's about. It's about the beauty of that and keep it pristine. And if he's willing to do that, then I just think let it go and let him work on it. I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead.
Councilman McIntosh
Go
was
ahead.
signaling you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I like the fact that we have the opportunities to have private-public partnerships, but I'm very concerned about giving away access to water because it's very rare. And I know you're saying we're going to have access, but there's something in here that's starting to spell trouble to me. And I brought this forward several years ago for the city to create a little park there for everyone. If it's been dedicated public access, why are we letting somebody private control it? So I voted for moving it forward before, but now that we're going to start limiting water access and people can't use canoes, that starts almost privatizing the water. And we've seen that work elsewhere, and that's not what I want to do. I think the developers intended a certain purpose for those accesses when they created the community on Little Hickory. And the rest of the accesses are still there. There might be a need to have this bay access. The other thing is, I know the sheriff's office with that WESIND grant, they're also looking to have some access there too. They've discussed that in the past, not necessarily that it's been something they've put down in writing, but I know it's been discussed. So I'm not going to be voting for this at this time. I'm sorry to say that because when I looked at the plan that the gentleman, it was a very ambitious plan. It looks more like England, like a box garden, than it does like a Florida garden. So I'm just not for this. I'm sorry.
Okay. Stephen, you were up.
Yeah, thank you. There are just some questions. I'll probably agree with it, but I didn't see a final architectural rendering in this package.
I have not gotten any changed ones. The last one I saw was the one in October. That I did not attach because there are some changes in this document that, for example, the differentiation of the fence has to be provided so that it's very clear it's a different piece of property than the property owners, because originally he wanted
Right.
one.
That really was my question. Back when we first looked at this, the rendering was nice, but it didn't distinguish between the owner's property and the park. And I'm concerned that the public won't recognize that that's a public park. The other questions I had, I guess, are there going to be two separate gates? I was trying to read through what this, and I couldn't quite visualize. Will there be two entries, I guess, to this? Because before it looked like that wasn't necessarily so.
I believe the intent was one entry, but we had a requirement for the kayak that he was to reserve the area in the northern. And I believe he had a central type access, which was a one area access gate.
In the front of the park, he does have two accesses. You can go in onto the left side and onto the right side. So there are two accesses for the public that will be on a timer, the dawn to dusk, so that people can go in and out both of those gates.
Okay.
And then we also will have access in the back portion for our city vehicles if we ever need to get in. And there will be one from the owner's property for his landscapers to be able to come in and do the work.
Okay, well, I have Nicole up there. Could I ask her a couple other questions, please?
Sure.
Is there going to be signage that's...
There will be signage, absolutely, that says it is a City of Bonita Springs public
Okay.
park.
And was the tree committee involved in this final rendering?
No, they weren't.
Okay. And you'll have oversight for the park?
Yep, absolutely.
And the last question is are there not other two paper streets on Hickory, or is that the only paper street we have?
There's additional paper streets on Hickory.
So there is, to Councilwoman Simon's question, there are other accesses for canoes and kayaks.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But the paper, understand that those paper streets are in about the same condition as this one.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, but
Yes,
they're there.
Yes.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Janet, go
That's
ahead.
my question.
Thanks.
Stick around,
I just have
Nicole.
to say that, I was first disappointed to hear that this, that the kayak launch, but I understand, a parking issue. And I don't want to be responsible for creating a public nuisance in a neighborhood, on the other hand, where we talk about all the time, I do, the creation of these small neighborhood pocket parks. So this kind of fits that, not one size fits all type things. So I'm grateful for any green space that the city can have. So I know there are other areas, where kayaks can get into the backwater from there. So this isn't like we have to have this spot. This isn't. So I'm willing to be flexible and move forward with the recommendations of not having the launch at this site.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, the other concern, Martha, that I have in particular is vehicles parking there. They don't tend to want to use the park because I've had the experience, people leave their cars anywhere and then go to the beach. We've had that problem up and down Hickory Boulevard, and I just, that's my concern.
Yep, that darn beach. Everybody wants to go there. I don't know what the heck that's all about. Nicole, this original contract here, it says kayak rest area.
Correct.
There wasn't a launch proposed here, was there?
We have never proposed a launch. It was in the original planning of, yes, it is a paper street that one could be put there, but we didn't have one in the plans to put there. But it was open that one could be put there.
So,
but it's not in my master plan.
In lieu of an actual launch, because yeah, you're right, there's no parking there and you can't pull over. I get it. But in lieu of that, I don't understand what would be wrong to have a kayak rest area. It'd be nice to have a place where somebody paddling along could stop and get out of their kayak and enjoy the park, just like everybody else that was walking down the road could do that. That's the only thing that I kind of visualized. I understand that, neighborhood not wanting to have that kind of thing there. But to me, if there was an access put there, what was the access to? It wasn't access to the nice wooded area. No, it was an access meant to go, and it wasn't a road to someplace. It was an access to the water. I think if we had to do this all over again and we went to subdivide that, guess what we would do? Periodically, we would put a place, we would be required by our comprehensive plan, as a matter of fact, to allow there to be a place where the public could access the water. And that's the only thing that bothers me about this. In the large scheme of things, I don't think it's really going to matter that much. However, we have never, ever, that I can remember, we have defended along the Imperial River, every one of these little stubs that goes down there. We don't give them up.
We gave one.
No.
Well, we go for trade. We trade sometimes or something like that. So this, and I know that this 5-year buffer gives me a little bit more confidence in it. So after a period of 5 years, maybe you can explain this. After 5 years, even though we commit that there won't be a kayak rest area put there, after 5 years, when this renewal comes up, what are the consequences of us saying, well, you know what? Really would be nice to put that there. What happens?
Well, he's asking for 25 years, so that's a council question also. I mean, do you want to allow him 25 years in exchange that he's going to give money in lieu of a security deposit? The council could possibly build something somewhere else with that money. That's up to council. That's where we're looking for direction. I mean, he didn't want to continue having his designer, turning in different plans, reiterations of plans if council was not interested in some of the things that he felt were deal killers. And he was okay with everything but those 3 issues.
Right. Okay. It's 25 years. Yes, Steve.
Audrey, what would be the consequences if we denied him the 25 years? Would he not want to then participate in the project?
I think he would find it too short.
He would find it too short and not do the project.
Pardon me?
I mean,
He would find it not to, at this point, based on the discussions we've had with him, he would find that too short a period of time, that he is putting up a lot of money, that for him it's just kind of too short of a period that he wouldn't develop the park.
Right. I mean, that would be at his risk. I cannot talk for him. That would
Correct.
be my impression, but I can't.
Dan.
Okay. Martha, you had something else?
Yeah, we just approved in our consent agenda, I think, the applying for money on the BP oil spill. And then we've also applied for the Restore Act for $2.2 million. We're talking about giving away the rights to a public deeded access for 25 years for $25,000 and then $185,000. If we want this to be full, and I always envisioned, when I brought this to council, and it was about 5 years ago, right, Rick? It being a pedestrian neighborhood park for the neighborhood, so that no parking, a walk-through park, kind of like we have over on Palm. Where you use that right away. It's just a little walk-through linear park. Go enjoy a vista on the river, maybe having a little resting place for a kayak. People being able to utilize it mostly from that neighborhood. I think, the best thing to do would be to say, next, maybe in our budget this year, we commit to taking care of that. We keep the access. That's not a lot of money. To give away 25 years of, really, he's kind of buying a piece of property on the bay, rights to it for about $185. Really? For 25 years? I don't think so. So I'd like to do it ourselves. That's where I'm at.
Okay. I'm just going to pitch in here. I agree somewhat with Martha there. From a standpoint of access to the waterway in Florida and the city's ability to get to the water through its piece of property when it needs to, whether it's for a dredging project or whatever. I mean, how many times are we having to go around and squat on other people's property and look for places and beg for places? 25 years from now, they will all be gone. All those places will be gone. What are you going to do then? 10 years from now, they'll all be gone. I can't, I won't be voting for this. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying from my perspective, and maybe a unique perspective, those places where you can actually get to the water, where the public or the city government can get to the water, they're rare as hen's teeth right now, and there's not going to be any more. So I can't support the way the 25-year thing. But anyway, but council, what's your pleasure?
Are you suggesting a different time frame?
I had no problem with the 5-year thing as long as there was a way to extract ourselves out of there. But I understand from the applicant, whatever, the property owner standpoint, adjacent property owner, you just want to put a lot of money in it if it's only going to be for 5 years. I get that, but you know what? I think that's kind of the deal. So I mean, I just don't think I agree. If you're going to sell it, sell it, and sell it for what it's worth. But don't for 25 years just because it's landscaped. Do that. I don't understand why we would for 25 years. So, but that's it. I think so far as an alternative, I would have left it the way it was and been content with that, as long as the city, as long as we're not binding the council 5 years from now from doing something that's for the best interest of the public in general, because we got free landscaping. And that's it.
May I ask another question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think Nicole said that 25 years, less than 25 years is a deal breaker. Is that correct?
That's just from our discussions. We haven't actually said to him, if you don't do if we don't get 25, what are you going to do? He has insinuated that, but Audrey and I could go back to him and say, it's 5 years or nothing, and see. I think the bigger issue that he had was the kayak launch, because the neighbors, as not just Hastings Investment, but the other neighbors did not want it as well. So that's why we put it in here that other people on Hickory did not want the access either. So that's kind of why we put it in here and decided that would be something we would bring forward to you, because not only would that help him, the other neighbors have come to us and said they don't want it either.
Yes. Steve.
Mayor, Council, would it be acceptable if we defer any more discussion on this and have you guys go back and see whether or not, as the mayor's indicated, 5 years, if that's a possibility?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Is that possible?
Yeah. Is that all right? Council, did you want to do that? Go ahead and send them back to the drawing board for a little bit.
Do you, just to clarify, do you want us to also state the launch has to be there? Is that something?
I don't think that was ever our intent, that one actually be built there.
Okay.
It's that I think that since it's the public's property, you have to reserve the right for the future councils and future. I mean,
Okay.
Let's face it, 25 years from now, the people down there may want something down there, and they can't have it. I mean, so let's be careful with our time frames.
I think Audrey and I can word that to him in a way that it's just a right, not I think actual build.
From my standpoint, I think that we have to remember that it's, even though you're giving somebody the right to do some things on there, it's still our property, and we need to reserve the right to do certain things.
Sure.
And the way I would word it is council was firm on the 5-year. The way I have it is it's 5 years, subject to 5-year renewals. I'm trying to find the actual clause here. And it does run with the land, not with, so if he sold it, he couldn't say, well, I own this license, property owner, that I sell your property to, you don't.
And I'm going to add one more thing here. If it does fall through, the people of Hickory Boulevard have every right to expect this city council to take better care of that lot.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, absolutely. And so if property owner says, nah, not interested, then they have every right to expect us to come down there and make that right. Okay?
That's something I can absolutely propose in next year's budget, if that's something like.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, just
if this doesn't work
if everything goes away. All right? We go good?
One last question.
Go ahead.
And I'm not trying to heap costs on this gentleman because I think it's a generous thing to do, but I need to see a final rendering before I can really say this is okay. The last one was not appropriate in my mind.
We can absolutely have him get that to us as we go back to him and then bring it back to you.
Thank
We
you.
can make sure we have that.
All right, thank you. Sure. You got everything, Carl? All right, thank you very much. No, there was not. All right, thank you. Item B?
Just to make sure I understand before we go to that, I'm going to, Nicole and I will contact Mr. Richardson to see if he's okay with the 5 years, a reservation for the kayak rest area, not a launch area, and I need a physical final rendering. And then if those are all acceptable and I can get all that, I'll bring it back to council once he has that, or once he provides that information.
Mayor?
Good, yes?
Is there maintenance access on that for, in case we, like you said, we have to
Yes.
dredge or something like that? Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Not for spoil site. Now, is that something, because if he's putting a lot of landscaping, he probably does not want a spoil site.
All right.
Well, if it's for 5 years and there's something changed, that's the main part of it. I mean, if it's every 5 years and the city decides it needs to do something else, well then, that's what it's going to have to be. So,
Right.
so I think that'll take care of
area
it.
kayak
I don't
launching.
see anything happening in 5 years. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, carry on.
Next is a follow-up to consider the estoppel claim presented by Burnwood Enterprises in the estate of James Burnett as to the application of the moratorium during the term of Bonita Springs Ordinance 12-04. You have the document, the memorandum from Special Counsel Beverly Grady, who is here, and I believe you all received from Ms. Montgomery a letter yesterday. Yesterday, that was sent. I don't know if the clerk received it. I can see she did not receive it, so I'll make sure she gets a copy of that. At this time, I will ask Ms. Grady to assist.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Beverly Grady with the firm of Retzo and Andrus. And the council in July, when the proposal that there was a basis for estoppel for the pending development order application, that applicant was requested to file the details of their basis for estoppel, and that was filed on November 16th, 2012. And we were to review that and evaluate that. And I think that it's worth having just a little background in the area of estoppel and vested rights, because Florida law recognizes the doctrine of vested rights in estoppel. Vested rights theory flows from the determination of whether a property owner has acquired a vested property right that cannot be taken away. Equitable estoppel requires the finding of 3 factors: an act or omission by the government; second, good faith reliance by the claimant on that act; and third, substantial reliance on the government's action or omission by substantial change in position or substantial expenditures. These 2 theories have been applied interchangeably, and you'll find the cases often address them both together, and that's what we've done and will do in this discussion today. Because the determination requires the application of equity in considering the criteria, there is not absolute certainty when you review the equitable estoppel cases as to an outcome when it comes to be litigated. Just to briefly review the city's facts, on April 18th, the city adopted Ordinance 1204, which established the moratorium on the processing of any permits which affected all land development approvals for homeless shelters within the boundaries of the city for the shorter of 12 months or the enactment of a new ordinance. In response to the claimant's letter, the City Council speaks as a collegial body, and no individual council member or staff member would have the authority to bind the city on any land use issue regarding the development approval for a homeless shelter when barred by the council's adopted ordinance. The council did not adopt or provide in the ordinance for exceptions from the moratorium for staff to issue any land development approval for homeless shelters as defined in Ordinance 1204. Could the City Council have provided for an exception in the moratorium? Yes. Could City Council currently provide for an exception for any land development application filed prior to the effective date of Ordinance 1204? Yes. However, both of these decisions were decisions of the Council. At this time, it's not something staff can decide based on the ordinance as it was written and adopted. And for example, there are moratorium ordinances that we've seen that do contain exceptions. And so that is something that one can consider at the time of an adoption of the moratorium. The estoppel claim requires an evaluation of the acts being claimed by the claimant and whether that reliance by the claimant was in good faith. The claimant, in this instance, was represented by counsel, and the representative of the claimant and attorney were available and attended the counsel's first reading on April 4th, 2012, the local planning agency on April 12, 2012, and counsel's adoption hearing on April 18th, 2012. And in addition, in the correspondence, the claimant and the attorney admit that they were aware and on notice of the proposed moratorium, which was authorized in March. On March 7th, 2012, the claimant's attorney was present and spoke in opposition to the draft ordinance on homeless shelters. This predates the issuance of the zoning verification letter requested by the claimant. On March 21, 2012, the City Council directed preparation of a moratorium ordinance with the first reading April 4th. And on March 25th, 2012, the notice of the moratorium ordinance was advertised and published in the news press. Now, the claimant has cited that, one, the issuance of a ZVL on March 16th, 2012 by Community Development requesting confirmation of 40 use groups.
Oh, you know, this is famous here now.
Rubio.
Oh.
Wasn't even going to say it.
And
you did a better job. It was very good.
And some legal advice statements as its basis for the act of the government. Often the claimant in their correspondence uses the generic term city. And we are going to discuss today where it's important to be very specific about the act that's being relied on. And the use of the term city doesn't really inform us when that term is used who or what was done in the city that the claimant is claiming reliance. That the claimant and claimant's attorney were present and objected to the moratorium ordinance on April 4th and April 18th, and at that time did not discuss with the council the addition of an exemption to the ordinance. It is important that the case law establishes a governmental entity may not be stopped through mistaken statements of law. And it's also well established for the law that zoning alone does not provide a vested right to a particular use. And if you look at the ZVL response letter issued by the city, this following quote was included in that letter. Quote, "The city of Bonita Springs may amend its land development regulations from time to time and is in the process of creating a homeless shelter use ordinance. The information provided herein may be subject to change as ordinances are enacted as amended," end of quote. So at that time, the claimant was on notice as to a pending change regarding homeless shelter use. As I said, when one is claiming estoppel, it's important to be very specific about what act upon which the claimant is relying. Who said it, who wrote it, what was said. And there are cases where statements of local government representatives are the basis for a claim of estoppel being made. And the key question the courts look at is what was this within the scope of the employee's duty to make such a statement? And the statement that was made or written, is it a factual representation and not a mistake in law as an interpretation? And a case that was cited in the memorandum, but I think it's worth just discussing the facts of that case, is in Martin County, they issued a notice of demolition to a property owner if they did not repair the property. The property is sold to a buyer who knew of this notice. The buyer, instead of filing for a permit to repair, had his architect call the building administrator and ask for an extension. The buyer had his attorney talk to the code enforcement officer, request an extension, was told, "We've put it on hold." What the code said was the only way to get an extension on a demolition permit was to file an appeal to the Board of Building Adjustments. No appeal was filed. 3 weeks later, the city demolished the building, and a lawsuit was filed because they had relied on the building administrator and the code enforcement officials saying this was on hold. And the court said there was no right to rely. When the code said something different, you couldn't rely on the statements of the employees. As I said, the case law does establish that the government may not be stopped through mistaken statements of law. And there was a case that I cited, and Ms. Montgomery responded to. It was the Branca case. And it was cited for that proposition because it was clear that the government cannot be stopped through mistaken statements of law. And in that case, the court ultimately determined that Branca had relied on a fact, and that was the basis for the estoppel. Here, a validly adopted ordinance said no approvals. That was the government's statement. And for applications to continue to be processed would be required to have the approval of the city council. One other example of a statement by a zoning official is Corona Properties of Florida versus Monroe County. The zoning official issued a vested rights letter after the density had been reduced, saying this property had vested rights for a density that was higher than what the code change was. Building permits were issued. A new owner buys the property, pulls the same building permit based solely on the vested rights determination. Then a current zoning official rescinds the vested rights letter and rescinds the building permit. New property owner sues. What the court did was review the code. What authority did that zoning administrator have to issue a vested rights determination? Determined they did not have the authority, and there was no estoppel to the higher density. Those are just some samples of cases where the claim is made based on representations of certain members of the government representatives, and depending on their authority and depending upon what was said, the courts determine whether that is a government act that can be relied upon. I also cited Gardens Country Club Incorporated versus Palm Beach because it was a case where an application was filed and the county had a pending comprehensive plan that was going to lower the density. So the county delayed the application and then refused to approve it once the plan was adopted. And the court said, no, zoning in progress does not apply to comprehensive plans. What the county should have done is adopted a moratorium ordinance, which is the process that you have followed here. Estoppel is a very challenging area of the law because the judge applies equities to those 3 criteria. And you certainly have Ms. Montgomery's response, and each of you were present through the hearings that took place and know the statements that were made. And so it is, in reviewing that, I found those cases that would provide a valid basis for not processing the application, but it certainly is available to council to make its determination as to what is the fair and reasonable action to take when a request is made to you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Before we get into this a little bit here, I'm going to ask you a question. So far as the direction from council, is it true that unless council has any direction that is contrary to what our current position is, there's no need for us to take any position at all?
I believe that your ordinance is clear that it has directed staff that it cannot issue any permits based on that. So the action that would need to be taken is if you are persuaded that you want to have the permit issued, then you need to direct staff through a motion.
And otherwise, this has been an informational item, is right? Is that correct?
Yes, I think council wanted to have an evaluation of what the law is applied to what the claimant has stated.
Okay, good. Audrey, do you agree? There's no action necessary by council unless they want to change what the position
correct.
currently
We're following
is?
as we understand the ordinance to be unless you tell us differently.
Okay, council, you understand?
Yep.
Got it? Any questions for Ms. Grady, or are we good? Good? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did want to just ask one thing about, in that garden.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to get it. It was, I didn't read the case, I'm sorry. Garden, thank you. In Gardens Country Club versus Palm Beach County, you said the moratorium, did the judge say the moratorium would have been the tool that would have been appropriate to use?
Yes, they did not adopt a moratorium in that case. They just delayed the permit until the comprehensive plan amendment was adopted, and the court said zoning in progress does not apply to comprehensive plan amendments. You shouldn't have delayed the permit. If you wanted to have delayed the permit, the appropriate tool would have been to have adopted a moratorium.
And I can read about that.
Yeah, I can make sure you have that case.
Well, that's very good, comforting. Thank you very much.
Okay.
One last thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm not trying to drag this out, but in all fairness, I only read as quickly as I could the opposing counsel's position paper this morning. Is there anything in there, Audrey, that would make you give counsel different direction than what we have?
Well, like you, I got it this morning also. I mean, there's quite a bit where I made statements that, quite frankly, would be statements that are misstatements of law, which, according to what Ms. Grady explained, would not be applicable in equitable estoppel. I mean, I can beat my chest. I mean, whatever I said is on the record. And, I wish, I was very
As is
clear.
this.
As is this.
By the way, counsel.
So it is what it is. The facts are what it is. I don't want to try to recreate facts or try to manufacture facts.
Okay,
one
thank
way or
you.
another.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Grady.
Thank you.
Okay.
was-
Beg your pardon.
That was Braca versus what? So I can look that up.
It's in the memo, but I'll make sure
We'll get you the case.
Braca versus Sarasota, what was it?
Okay.
Just trying to
item
put it on the
item
record.
C.
Thank you. This is permission to advertise the Bonita Springs Homeless Shelter Operational Use Permit Ordinance for public hearings. I have March 20th and April 3rd as dates viable for this. This ordinance has been worked on by your staff and LPA diligently since the moratorium period. I'm happy to say that we now have an ordinance that is in, I think, pretty much final form. There is the copy you have attached to the green sheet has underlines and crosshatches, but that was to show or denote where legal had made some changes to it. The ordinance was also reviewed by Beverly Grady and Robert Pritt. A clean copy of this ordinance is item XC on your errata sheet.
Okay. Counsel, what's your pleasure? Well, I wouldn't call it pleasure, but good.
Yeah.
So move to a second reading. Is there a second?
What, first reading? We have not
First reading,
advertised
that's
it
right.
yet.
Oh,
Permission
wow.
to advertise.
Sorry, can't count.
All
We're kind of rushing it there a bit, huh?
I'll make second, but are we going into discussion?
Oh,
or-
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second to move it to first reading. Discussion, any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I have several general questions and comments, and I have a number of specific questions and comments. I guess first of all, we really don't have I guess the real questions for you, Audrey, are: is this answer legally correct in your opinion? Is this ordinance?
Are you asking me to make a moral statement?
I know. I'm asking you to make a legal statement. Does it satisfy the legal requirements of what we're trying to achieve here?
At this time, the city does not, nor does the state of Florida, have regulations on homeless shelters. They have regulations on community residential homes. They have regulations on rehabilitation. This ordinance is something that staff did a lot of research, looked at what communities do have homeless shelter operational rules, tried to generate rules based on input that they got from the LPA, based on input that they got from the public, and yes, based on legal input.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean,
that's all I want to know.
it's really a factual basis. Is this how you wish to regulate a facility, or do you think the industry should be self-regulated?
Well,
That's a
part of the
philosophical call.
LPA questions were, when the LPA made several drafts, there were issues about legality of what they brought in. Are the legal questions resolved in this draft?
I hope so. And by saying that, we find some every blue moon. I mean, not to scare you, we've gone through this
I'm
ordinance.
not scared.
with a- okay.
I'm asking you.
We've gone through the ordinance with a fine-tooth comb, both this ordinance and the LDC Chapter 4. And every now and then, we'll go, ooh, I'm reading this sentence. Now, the LDC 4, there is still one issue pending. I can discuss that when we talk about that issue.
Right.
But this ordinance, we believe is good to go.
All right.
If you believe with what's in the ordinance.
Well, that's my question. Is it legally correct?
We believe it's legally
All right.
sustainable.
Okay.
Legally
Then the
sustainable.
second question that comes is a broad general question. Does this resolve the issues that the citizens brought forward earlier that created the moratorium and ultimately created this ordinance? Does this solve the questions, the issues that they brought forward? And I'm asking you because you're the only real
Right.
representative of the LPA here.
And John Dolmer is also, but I think when we went through the ordinance, there were some concerns that the citizens had that would probably be considered concerns that until it actually materializes, you really could not place it in an ordinance because it would either be unconstitutionally vague. So many times, for example, people wanted us to put in things in the ordinance. A good example, identification. You know, to have certain types of, when you check into the shelter, you need to have more identification than when you leave this country. And those are things that are not something that we could sustain, so we modified the language.
So in order to make it legally correct, we took out part of the LPA's position on trying to deal with the concerns that the citizens had originally.
With the LPA present, knowing that we were doing that, yes.
Yes, but I asked the question.
Yes, there were many changes that we made that were taken out because they were inappropriate and would probably not, they would weaken the ordinance because they would be found, even though we have a severability clause, they would be found unconstitutional. Now, there is a severability clause, so if there's one provision, but if you look at the ordinance totality of whole, if you had a lot of those type of languages in it, so there was probably, I think, there was a memorandum that went out, I'd like to say maybe 15 or 20 changes legally that we modified.
Yeah, I've been trying to watch it as it progresses, and I'm concerned that we've taken so much of the teeth out of it that it doesn't really satisfy. But that gets my last general question: are the citizens who were included in these discussions and ultimately the drafted ordinance, are they satisfied that this is appropriate?
I would say this is an ordinance where, like, sometimes going through mediation, you have both sides being unhappy. I would love to be a people pleaser, but there are times where I cannot be a people pleaser on this.
I understand that. Okay, so the answer is yes, no?
I think that they would prefer to have something rather than nothing.
Well, I can help you here.
Please.
The real answer to the question is no, not everybody is happy.
Okay.
But are everyone's expectations realistic?
Understand.
Of course not.
And are they legally
Across
correct?
people.
That-
Exactly.
And that's where I was trying to get.
From what I could see, and I think what we all kind of witnessed, is the LPA did an unbelievable job of trying to sift through there and be that balance between the community expectation, individuals' expectations, and what was legal and what was, respectable and rational. And I think that what you've ended up here is this document that you have before you, that, as Audrey said, is like any good piece of work isn't probably going to not be satisfactory for everyone. I mean, that's just the way it is, I think. But they're good questions to ask. But I think the answer is that this is as close as they could get, and now it ball's in our court.
But there was consensus.
It seemed as though
By the LPA, yes.
by the LPA there was.
Absolutely.
And I saw the last LPA meeting wasn't as, well, I don't know if it's any indication, but there weren't as many people there as there were before. I think in all in all, I have to tell you, that it was probably a good educational process for the entire community to go through that whole process together. So I think we all learned a lot of things.
Right, and let me point out, some of the things that people requested sounded great on paper. For example, things to provide additional rehabilitation. And I think it was that they wanted to provide it because they felt it was best for the people in the facility. I mean, it wasn't terrible or there were some nice things that we had to also take out because realized, well, that could be, over-inclusive because there might be people in the facility that are only in there one day. So do they really need job resource training if they're only going to be there for such a short period?
Okay.
Is that now over-inclusive, and does that now make it unconstitutionally vague?
All right, good. And any other questions?
Yeah, I do have several questions.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to drag this
No,
out,
go
but
ahead, go ahead.
this is too serious, critical
on.
an issue. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
This is the time.
Okay, I am. I didn't see in here anything about lockdown hours, or, I mean, I know what the hours of operation are, but there is lockdown during the evening. I mean, they have to be out from 8 to 5.
Curfew, you mean?
I'm going to need to look at Mr. Dolmer.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just picking at you.
Actually, when it comes to the requirement to leave the facility, that was one of the items that the residents did not want in there. They did not want people forced just to be out on the street without any place to go or anything to do. So that was not a requirement.
Are they free to leave at any time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's a civil right.
That's a question. Are there restrictions, John, on the distances from homes, schools, walking routes for school children?
Well, there are, but if you remember, the city attorney said there was one item that we were still working on, and that is the item. What we are looking to do is find a separation requirement that allows for certain portions of the city where you could have an application for a shelter. Right now, the maps we've come up with make that very difficult, so we're looking to revise separation requirements so that's possible.
Okay. So this isn't the final draft by any means?
I would say that that's the only item that I see in motion right now.
And that's not in this draft, that's in the next draft, item D.
Right. I'm looking at page 17, and it talks about essential services. And what's the legal definition between essential services and social services?
Essential services is more like what Bonita Springs Utilities does. It's placing the pipes, transformers.
Yes, sir. It's more of infrastructure as opposed to what you would think of as a social service. Social
services is human.
Assistance.
Essential services getting infrastructure to humans.
All right. I guess page 55, if you can go to that point. Page 55 is, I'm sorry, page 48. I'm trying to reconcile electronic and paper here. Part B, 4-3071, Part B, it's a pretty broad disclaimer.
And this is where council would be preempted because of federal laws.
Okay, well, all right. That's really the only specific questions I have right now, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Well done. Any other questions? Yes, Pete.
It's my understanding that we may or may not have a firm number of people that have stayed in a homeless shelter in Lee County this past year, this past 2 years, past 5 years, that unduplicated, that have listed their primary place of residence as Bonita Springs or listed a Bonita Springs zip code. Do we have a firm handle on that number?
Do you want me to start?
I was just going to say, we have the numbers that have been provided to us. None of your staff has actually done the counts. So the accuracy of that information is going to be based upon the accuracy of those that collected it. I cannot guarantee or vouch for it, but it is the best number that we have.
Understood. I'll just say this. It's my understanding that that number that we have is not necessarily accurate.
It may vary up or down. I don't know if it's a number that concerns me about being close. But if the number's 27, the actual number may have been 29 or 31. I'm not in a position to disagree with that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Martha.
Yeah, well, we can amend this if we find that there are glitches. How would that apply to a person who gets a permit. If we say, you know, I don't know, people with blue hair can't stay at the shelter, can we amend that? And then they have to accept that under the permit that they've been issued?
Well, again, if it was blue hair, I would presume that would be in the operational permit because that's not a land use matter.
Right.
And yes, you could amend it, although I hope that we don't have a hair color requirement, but, but yes, if there was a rash, again, it had to be constitutionally a legal type amendment, we could amend the operational. As to the land use, there's grandfathering and non-conforming, so depending on what the amendment is, the application of that amendment, I mean, you can't.
How many people in a dormitory would be land use?
It's
No.
operational.
That would
It's
be
operational still. Okay, well, good. So, I mean, you can still tinker as things go along. I noticed on page 7 of 13 in the errata, about a management and a security plan in form and substance acceptable to the city, addressing the following. 2, rules of conduct and registration system for residents. Residents at the shelter, right?
Yes.
Is there a way, I don't know if it's constitutionally legal, but can there be priority? I know that you can't probably require because of travel and constitutional issues with people's freedom to travel. Priority given to Bonita Springs residents because this would be who we'd want it to serve. Well, you know, we're saying, you know, that was one of the problems we thought we were having. So, you know, we like to serve our own in Bonita Springs. We're very happy to do that. Would there be an issue with that?
We can look at that issue to see, but allow us the opportunity to look at that
Of course,
specific
of course.
issue.
I think that might be a improvement. I think they did an awesome job because there are so many issues in here related to constitutional issues, federal, Justice Department, protected classes, recovery, addiction, blah, 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 blah. You know, it was a lot you guys had to handle and look at. And to the LPA, congratulations for dealing a very complicated issue. And to all the citizens who have learned so much through this process, as well as the council members, you know, we want to do what's best for our community, and we want to do what's right for the people who live here. And the last, in that instance, I want to comment on the sexual predators, that sexual predators will be prohibited from living in a shelter of this type. There won't be ability for a shelter for like sexual predators, right?
I believe that's more of a halfway house.
Yes.
You believe,
Transitional
but
facility.
there's no constitutional issue with that. I saw that if somebody's sentence were commuted or their civil rights restored, well, can't sexual predators have their civil rights restored, but they have to register as a predator? So I would look at that language maybe as anyone who has to register as a predator might be prohibited. Do you know what I'm saying? Because people who are predators can vote, right?
They can vote.
That's a civil right restoration. So, thank you. That's all I have
Okay,
to say.
thank you very much. Anyone else have anything?
I do.
Okay, Bill.
First question for Audrey is on the document that I have dated today. In the back, there's all the yellow things they're all taken out. That's the old uses.
Correct. You have clean copies, so the items that you saw in the green sheet that had highlighted copies, those were copies to be changed, right. And that was removed. That was a proposal to add an additional class of social services.
Okay, well, where's that?
It was removed from the draft.
Yeah, I understand it, but where's the copy that shows where you moved the homeless shelters to a separate list on a group 4?
No, the errata has it as the staff recommendation, which the LPA accepted.
Hold on, okay.
Which has it where that is now group 4.
Right.
So, but it's not separate, it's one of a few things in group 4.
In the original land use that we acquired from the county, there was never a homeless shelter mentioned in any of the documents that I've ever seen.
It was referred to as a home for destitute men and women.
Well, yeah, but it specifically, it never shown a home shelter. And now it does in the new proposed ordinance, it now shows that as a possible use.
The word homeless shelter was not a word in the original land development code.
Okay. Now it is, or will?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On page 7, you'll look at that, please. Not 7. Hold on a minute. When you still have the paper, sometimes it takes a few more minutes.
And I'm not sure, 7 in the errata or 7 in the?
Well, let's, excuse me,
And-
page 8.
And are we now on operational, or are we on land development
I
code?
have no idea.
Page 8 of 52, or page?
Well, page 8 of
It's a
52.
different document, so we probably ought to figure that out.
Well, okay. I have them all here, but,
I'm there, Bill.
are you? Okay.
And which document is it?
Both.
This is, well, wait a minute, this is the, okay.
Paper 8.
So we're on the zoning now.
Paper 8 zoning,
sorry.
which is the item we're talking about.
Okay, notes, has notes, all these notes.
Yes, sir.
Number 1 says, an expansion which will bring the number of beds to 50 or more require PT zoning. See section 4341 and table 4-934.
Yes, sir. That is existing language that refers to assisted living facilities.
Okay, it doesn't apply to homeless shelters.
No, sir. This is, the notes apply, are existing notes, except where there's an actual underlining or a
Okay.
crossing out of the language.
Thank you, because that was confusing for me.
Okay, Bill, you have anything else?
That's it for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else have anything? Okay. So Audrey, what you're looking for is to move this to the first reading.
Correct, sir.
Motion to move forward.
We have a motion to move this to a first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second.
Now, let me get a clarification. Is the motion applying to the Bonita Springs Homeless Shelter Operational Use Permit Ordinance?
Item C.
10C?
Item C,
Okay.
which is the operational ordinance for now. Is that correct?
Take a quick look
Good.
here, please.
Good.
We're through the zoning ordinance? Are we working on the zoning?
No,
we
item
haven't-
C is the
C.
operational, item D is the zoning ordinance.
All right, I need to ask a couple more questions, I'm sorry.
Okay?
I
There's still a
apologize.
motion and a second, and go ahead.
Let me get on the operational to make sure that I am correct here. That's the one that has how many pages?
16.
16. All right, let me get there. Sorry.
That's right.
And that's 16 on the paper, or 16 on the green
Yeah,
sheet one.
yeah. I guess there's a question in my mind. If you look at page 14 of the paper, there's under number 16, item D. It says it asks for the number of residents having felony records, but if you look back on page 4 of the paper, it's taken out all the criminals, anybody with criminal records. So are they allowed or not allowed?
There's two different sections that you're referring to.
Yes.
Under F on page 4
Yes.
was initially who could not be a resident of the shelter.
Right.
And then on page 14, under item 16, that is the reporting requirements that a shelter must provide to the city.
Well, yeah, but if they don't allow felons in the homeless shelter, why would they have to report on it?
Well, if you see, most of those have been struck through.
It is possible, the felons that we're talking about are specific crimes that are considered either sexual predators or considered violent crimes. It's possible that you could have a felon who has a white-collar crime.
A felon's a felon.
It's different.
Correct?
No, there's different types of felons that have different
in
sentencing
regards to
guidelines.
this document, if it referred to in number 4, felons in general, well then 16D shouldn't be in there. That's just it. I'm not saying one is right or wrong.
It doesn't read that way, though, sir.
In number 4, does it?
Well, it says, F says, has been convicted of a crime as specified in Florida statutes.
Yes, but the crime in the Florida statutes, they're very specific crimes. I can pull up the statute. I read it out to the LPA. Those are specific types of crimes. There's other types of felonies that a person could, be convicted of, that because they are not, these are violent felonies.
There you go.
Well, you've taken out, from the original draft, you've taken out murder. So is a murder allowed or not?
No, murder is still a violent felony.
I don't know, I don't know the Florida statute. In the statute that's referenced here, these that have been taken out from an earlier draft are not going to be allowed in the homeless
Most
shelter.
of them are still in the same, it's just instead of listing these, we're referencing the state statute. And most of them, but I don't believe all, I think the aircraft piracy may not be in there.
Well, I don't want to
There's one that,
I don't make light of it. I'm just saying, if at one point there was a murder allowed or not allowed, are they now? Because most of us who are laypersons don't know the Florida statutes.
right.
I don't.
And
I
I'm
don't
pulling
think
up the statute.
I don't think our residents really want that kind of criminal in a homeless shelter
That's
in Bonita.
correct, and I think we all agree on that. The type of crimes that we're talking about are very violent crimes. I just want to make sure I get the right list, because there's several in this statute. There are other types of felonies that a person could be admitted to a shelter. Embezzlement, for example. Somebody,
What page is the statement on with statute?
on page 4 in the green sheet, and on page, let's see.
People have 4 felons
Okay.
4 DUIs, which would probably be somebody that would get served there, are
Yeah,
felonies.
Page 3 on the other.
Maybe this would help, if you could, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe a little bit better description of a crime, committed of a crime as specified. Obviously, these are violent, or
Yes, I can read
violent
them to you.
crimes.
These are the crimes that
No,
are
no,
classified as habitual violent felony offenders.
I want it in writing. I want to be able to read it to know, but
Yes, sir. Well, that's not a problem.
I'll
okay.
give you a
We'll have
copy
a
of the
copy.
statute,
Well,
sir.
that'd be helpful, I guess.
And the statement that you just made there, that would be a good thing to put in F right there as that term that you used right there, because I think that would better describe.
Well, I think the
Intent.
reason why that was changed to a reference as opposed to a list is because the state may change that list.
Well, right, yeah, and you could probably include both.
You could
Yes,
amend
sir.
it.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
Yeah, you can amend both.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have 2 more. I'm sorry to be jumping around. On page 8 of the paper, there was at one point in this box that's under A, it said homeless shelters will be limited to a maximum of 30 residents at any one facility, excluding children under the age of 6. Is that still in or is that out?
That comes down to council's choice. There was a discussion on how it was.
We changed it, remember, at the meeting. If you look at the errata sheet, it is now where there's one, I'm trying to find it. There's just one, which is homeless shelters will be limited to a maximum of 30 residents at any one facility, excluding children under age 6.
And how did you come up with the number 30?
John?
That was a process where we have collected the data from those that have collected the data and try to put proportions together, because we don't have any. There's been 2 specific studies on Bonita Springs, so let me start with that. All the other information that we have is Lee County in general. And for Lee County information, we've tried to take proportionate information and adjust it so that it is consistent with the 2 counts that we have had. We have had, the Sheriff's Department has done an account which produced 18, I believe, and there was another count that produced 36 homeless residents in Bonita Springs. Based on those 2, based on the proportionate information we have on the county as a whole, we use that to come up with 30.
So in terms of 45,000 residents, we expect to see 1 homeless person for every 1,500 residents? I mean, that's the number it works out.
Actually, it was, the city is approximately 7% of the population of Lee County. And so that's how we had worked on it. 1 to 1,500 was close. It was something that we had seen in other municipalities as well as an example, but it was not one after it was presented that we continue to recommend.
It really gets to the third leg of what I try to use as a decision-making process, and that is there a need? And I don't know how you come up with a number of 30 if the sheriff says there's 18, and I think maybe to Councilman Simmons' point, we don't know what the need is. So, you know, I guess I'm concerned that we're not really looking at what the need is in Bonita.
I do not disagree with you.
Okay.
If this was an issue that I could go do research or go forth and put effort to give you an exact number that would stay consistent and still accurate, I would do it.
All right.
Unfortunately, this is a number that is ever changing, and is a number that is seasonal, and it is a number that if you are correct on one night, there's a strong likelihood you will not be correct with that same number on the next night.
I understand, but that's still a major concern for, I think, the people and certainly me. This is the last point I'll make, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
On page 1 of the paper, there's a term that says that Bonita Springs City Council recognizes that the homeless population have certain basic rights as individuals, and then the phrase is, and desires to encourage but not require. That I'm uncomfortable that we are encouraging people to come to the homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to staying in the woods?
No, as opposed to the phrase doesn't need to be in there. They have certain basic rights as individuals that those in need have the opportunity to go to a homeless shelter.
Let me have special counsel respond to your question on this one.
I think that in working in the whereas clauses that we took a neutral position, and part of the basis of the homeless shelter is that was a preference over, as Ms. Vance just said, someplace in the woods. And so from a planning perspective, we thought that was really standard language that would recognize what the purpose of that use was, since it's now being regulated.
I understand, but I'm suggesting that if you take that phrase out, it reads, recognizes the homeless population have certain basic rights as individuals, that those in need have the opportunity to go to a homeless shelter. The opportunity rather than encouraging. What I think a lot of the citizens have been concerned about is that we're bringing people in who are not Bonita Springs homeless.
I would just respectfully say I don't think that phrase equates to that. But that is why we added it. Encourage rather than other places that there's no shelter for.
Good. Again, you're legal counsel. I'm layman. That's my concern. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I apologize for the time.
That's all right.
Ben,
Fine.
I missed
Bill,
something.
Good job. Bill, you
Yeah.
something else.
Are
you on the operational one?
I got the right one.
Okay.
On page 12,
Page 12.
and to Steve's point, expansion of existing facilities. Is that in black letters there? The point is, it says existing facilities, plural, that desire to expand must modify their management and security plan and will be processed under the same procedure as new shelter facilities. So are we saying that we're possibly going to have more rather than one? Or are we going, and it looks like we're going to allow these things to come down and everybody else will be using it besides the needed citizens in Bonita Springs. It sounds like a major consideration to increase the homeless
I think, Bill, that if you put a limit of 30 homeless sheltered people.
Yes.
I mean, I think this is in anticipation of 20 years from now, that if somebody says, well, we got a facility that has 5 people in it, we really want to have 6 or 8. And that's what this is made for that eventuality.
Yes, sir.
I don't think it's necessarily an invitation to expand beyond the parameters of what's been authorized in the rest of the document.
It's to allow for meaningful applications.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in due process.
Well, you know, I have hundreds, maybe thousands of emails and from people that live in our community, including many or all the businesses that would be impacted by this kind of circumstance, which I know we're at the beginning of this, but quite frankly, the people have not been heard recently as in terms of number of people coming up, but I believe that they will come out, and I'm very, how shall I say this? We must listen to the people that live in this town and listen to what they say and then apply it, no matter what the risks are, because it's to that point from what I know and all the lists that I have that it's so important to this city that we not create something that will impact us, more of us than should, and that's, I'm probably speaking out of turn here, so to speak, but I want you to let you know that there are hundreds of thousands of people in this town that do not want any part of a homeless shelter. Thank you.
I don't disagree.
Thank you.
They're visible.
Anyone else this time?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, when hearing other members speak, it was brought to mind that 30 people can be limited to is there a percentage standard for the Justice Department? Let's say we have 30 people who are homeless. Do you have to accommodate that all 30 of them would have accommodations in your city, or 20%, or what? Because, you know, out of 30, if you have 30 homeless people, 12 of them are going to stay with friends. They just won't go to a shelter. 12 of them will stay out in the woods. And so you probably have 6 people who go to a homeless shelter. So is there a Justice Department formula? And the other thing is, it said 30 adults, but children were unlimited. Is that correct? So is there a limit, that's 2 questions, on orphanages for how many children can be housed at them? Would we consider that? Square footage, like a bed, like we do with our rental ordinance, so many people per square foot for bedrooms? Because if you say children are limited, well, who's not to say that the 600 homeless children in Lee County aren't going to all come to Bonita? So.
This ordinance speaks to shelters as opposed to orphanages. The reason why we weren't looking
I
at...
have to ask you to speak in the mic, please.
The standard was asking if there was persons per square foot as far as children go.
Well, you have building code requirements for residential uses.
Okay.
And they still consider children people, right?
Yes, sir.
So far.
Thank you very much.
So is there some kind of standard for how many people you have to accommodate, of a 100% number? You have to accommodate 100% to see that they have, under the
Are you
Justice,
talking like an
the
ADA
Justice
type of-
Department, so
No.
we don't get, Justice Department coming and clobbering us for, you haven't accommodated for the homeless people.
No, there
and
is
you're-
no the city's not talking about building its own shelter.
No,
So the city is not looking at an accommodations issue.
but we don't want to bar
at the
that
Department of
either.
Justice. What the city does not want from Department of Justice is a situation where it criminalizes or makes illegal ordinary behavior or conduct that just because a person does not have a place to be, such as sleeping on a beach or sleeping at a park, they do not want the city to criminalize behavior and not have a meaningful place for that person to be able to be at otherwise.
So do we have to allow accommodation 100% though? For
Well, I think this gets back to
our
some of the
ordinance, so if we want to
questions.
limit it to 20 or
I think this gets
10
back
or-
to some of the questions that Councilman McIntosh was asking. What is the need? Well, I can tell you what count numbers have been provided, but I cannot tell you what the absolute number is within the city right now, or I cannot tell you what it'll be tomorrow. So 100% of what?
Right. I mean, it's not a perfect algebraic formula in trying to get to a number. I think the planners had to look at what would be an appropriate size facility based on what other jurisdictions have allowed, so you do not create a situation where you have a mega shelter.
Thank
And
you.
that's where the LPA also made the suggestion, it was the LPA, it was not a staff suggestion, of not including the under 6, and that provides more of an incentive for family shelter.
Let's cut to the chase there on the main question first, all right? So far as one of the first things that the LPA probably tackled was some people want a complete ban. They don't want to see homeless shelters in Bonita Springs at all. And was indeed the conclusion, whether it was right or wrong, was the conclusion was, yeah, banning is probably not sustainable. Is that a fair statement?
To ban or to just have an exclusion that you will not allow such use in the city is not sustainable unless you have that use provided somewhere else very close.
Exactly. And so then the next part of it was, well, okay, well then we need to allow some realistic accommodation. And so the stab in the dark they took is we need to have some kind of data. The data that they found was what was available. And so you came up with the 30 people.
Yes, sir.
Or 30 people plus the kids. And so that not being a gigantic number, I would probably argue 30 people. That seemed like an accommodation that some people could argue is not enough. Some people could argue is way too much. But that's the number right now, and that is a number that the city. There may be 5, and if there's 5, great, and if there's 30, that's what it is. And the city in the future can twiddle with this number as it goes along if they want to, or if they don't want to. But I mean, so I think, we can sit here and talk about if there's 10, 15, 20, you need to set probably a number. And if you don't, well, then you're going to have an unlimited amount.
Yeah, but if each adult or 2 adults have 2 or 3 or 5 kids, that could be a lot of people.
Well, actually, the most recent study that was done that showed there were 36 residents within the city showed that there were no families. Yeah. So that would include children. Now, whether that's still true or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure that this conversation will continue the next 2 hearings if we get to that place. Do we have any other questions or concerns at this particular point in time before we send this to the first reading? Yes? Anything else? Go ahead, Steve.
No, I'm good.
You good? Anybody? Okay, we have a motion and a second to send to first reading. And what's that date?
The dates are March 20th, and then the second hearing, if it goes forward, is April 3rd.
Okay.
And as I understand it, we will research to see if we can add a priority for Bonita Springs residents, as well as I will add into page 3, number F, defined as a habitual violent felony offender. And I'll get Councilman McIntosh, along with the rest of you, a copy of the state statute that has that actual list.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Mayor?
Yes?
Could we flesh out the thing about 30 and kids? Because really, you could end up building a shelter for 60 people. It would be a lot larger, so, right? 2 kids per adult, or,
This was the number that was recommended by the LPA, and the under 6 was something recommended by the LPA.
I understand. It's just an issue about square footage and stuff, so.
So, but the operational permit would allow for 30 people, and then if there are other kids there. So somebody comes in for a zoning application and says, we want to have a 40-bed shelter, and 30 of them we foresee as being adults, 10 being children. They will be held to that.
That's what I mean.
Is that correct?
They would be maximum of a 30 shelter, maximum occupancy, but they could provide bed facilities or bedding for people under age 6. So I would project that it would allow additional, bedding.
I think this is kind of an iffy place because sometimes what shelters do, no offense to the shelter people, but they will expand their facilities and put cots up in kitchens and doorways and things that it should be defined, I believe, and not and just kids, but and 2 kids per adult or something like that, or and then the other you can swap the other numbers or something, but
the ordinance does have it that when you have children, it does change how you do the spacing, for the facility.
Okay, well, as the mayor had pointed out, if somebody comes in for that zoning and says we want a 40-bed facility, they could get up to a 100-bed facility because they could bring a whole mess of kids with them and then have 30 for adult. That wouldn't work.
Could we move the issue?
Well, why don't we go ahead and that'll be one of those items that we need to sort out in the first reading.
Thank
How about
you,
that?
Mayor.
Okay? All right, roll call, please.
Councilman Slakta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons.
Aye.
Councilman Lockhart.
No.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay, and the next one we have is the zoning part of this.
Yes, and I actually have Alexis Crespo who can provide you with a small presentation to start.
Okay.
Morning again, Alexis Crespo with Waldrop Engineering. Based on your understanding and clearly having reviewed the ordinances in detail at this point, my presentation was high level and described the general framework, so I don't believe, based on the previous conversation, that it would be necessary to go through that, seeing as you are very aware of what's in these ordinances.
Well, and I think it's best if you prepare to do that at the first reading.
Yes, sir.
When that would be great, because that way we put the public on notice. The public will be here to see your presentation.
Certainly.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Alexis?
Could I ask if the presentation you have has a photograph of properties under our land development code that would be suitable for this zoning?
Are you talking about a map as far as locations?
Yeah.
That is currently being prepared by city staff.
Thank you. You're
Okay.
so good.
All right. Any other questions?
I also want to point out, city staff, prior to your adoption, will have a planning study provided to you of the different places that they looked at, so that you can also adopt that study in conjunction with the ordinance.
Oh, good. That would be very good.
Yeah.
All right. Council, what's your pleasure? You want to send this to a first reading so that we can get the public involved? I'm sure they want to be.
Move to first reading.
I have motion to move the first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
No.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Audrey?
No, sir.
Okay. We're going to, hold on. City manager's report.
Thank you, sir. I just have a few items. First off, A and B are the monthly reports we submit to you. Stand by for any questions if you have any. No questions. Moving on. Something really important happened at BSU board meeting last night. And upon approval of the BSU board, we now have in place one-stop shop permitting. I will tell you that, to give credit where credit is due, Arlene Hunter, some number of months ago, put together a task force of our partners, BSU folks, our fire partners, and the Water Management District actually sat on that task force. And the goal was to be able to have our customers experience the same type of feeling and process as other cities where all these things are under one roof. Okay, for example, in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, that are full-service cities and have their fire departments and their utilities under the same roof. You know, an applicant comes into the door, they submit everything they need, and then those plans are sent out to those departments for review. We obviously have a different situation in here, that we have community partners who have committed time and time again to be our partners and to streamline the process and to make sure that when we have economic development opportunities, that they're there at the table and trying to make that process move as quickly as possible. But now we can tout that we are in the same situation as the full-service cities, and that is, if somebody's got a project that involves the city, involves BSU, involves fire, that they can bring one application in. They can just bring that application and that information into the Community Development Department and submit that information there, and then we will take care of making sure those reviews are sent out to the other, I say departments, or the other entities, okay? And so it's all coordinated through community development. And so our customers are seeing a much more efficient operation. It was not always easy. We had different involvement, different regulations to deal with, different processes to try to meld to make this happen. And so I just want to thank Arlene and all our partners, BSU, the Water Management District, and the Fire Department, for their efforts to make this happen. We will officially implement this, we hope, March 1st, but we're going to start touting it now because this is a great thing. It's going to save our customers steps and stops and time, and that's a good thing. So I thank everybody for that, and I just wanted council and the public to know that.
Good job.
And then next, I just wanted to clarify that the council meeting for March the 6th, we want to clarify that that's actually going to be a canceled council meeting because of the Tallahassee trip. Is that accurate?
That is
Or would you prefer we attempt to reschedule that meeting? And my only concern about that is that, as you all know, Diane had been attempting to talk to you all about trying to schedule a sustainability workshop in March, and there were just not any good dates. So,
Council, what's your pleasure? But I think that it's better just to go ahead and cancel it, because that way you're going to eliminate any confusion from the public standpoint. They're used to going on a certain day, and we'll be lucky enough to go ahead and get the word out there that it's canceled, much less try to reschedule it. What's your pleasure?
May I ask if the second meeting will be at 5:30, or that 18th, or is it what, the 20th?
the 20th,
The March 20th meeting? Will we be having that at 5:30? So we have a big thing on the docket, I guess, and there might be need for public comment, but at least we can have the one meeting we have in the month available for all the public to be able to attend. I know that, it's, as far as regularity goes, it's usually 9 a.m., but I think 5:30 might make it more accessible for people, especially with such an important issue on our burner right now.
I just might say, number one, you were just talking about confusion. I think the timing change might create confusion. The other thing is, remember, it's only on these important items, it's only first read. All right, so you're going to have a second read at the first meeting in April if things go as scheduled, and you will have a 5:30 meeting on that date.
So then we'll have one more date, Mayor, after. Well, the second read should be the read to adopt, but if we have input or something that's really disturbing people and something that really needs to be changed, we'll still have time to do that by the next reading.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Uh-oh, the lawyer has disappeared.
What?
Okay.
Okay. All right, good.
I just hope that's
So,
true.
Council, you're good with just canceling the meeting? Yep. Okay, good. Anything else?
Yeah,
Carl?
staff has planned that there can be changes all the way up to final adoption, so we understand that that's a possibility on anything we do like this.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, Mayor and council member items, resolution appointing a member to the Veterans Advisory Committee. Stephen?
Yes, sir. If I may have your permission, continue on with some of the other.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As you know, the Veterans Advisory Committee is composed of individuals from the American Legion, veterans of VFW, et cetera. This is a vacancy that was left by Will Freitag, and because he had esophageal cancer, passed away. We have one individual by the name of Scott Klein. Scott is a VFW commander here in Bonita Springs, and David Grossi, who's been patient enough to sit here throughout the entire meeting, forwarded the name from the Veterans Advisory Committee. So I'd like to move that we appoint Scott Klein. I know you know Martha and others have known him.
I'll
He's
second.
an outstanding individual.
Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Martin?
Aye.
Councilman Slack?
Aye.
Mayor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilman Simmons?
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons?
Aye.
Councilman Longcart?
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh?
Aye.
Okay, what else you got for us?
Okay, yesterday I had a privilege and an honor to meet with Gildo Tomei at Citrus Park. He is a Korean veteran, and as most of you may or may not know, that this is the 60th anniversary of the Korean War. This gentleman also, through the Rotary Club, the networking, 3 days later, the Canterbury Assisted Living off of Vanderbilt provided a bed for him. I don't know what medical condition he has, but he needed something for his back. And they came through, and I thank Canterbury for what they've done for this veteran. And this family was absolutely outstanding. So it was an honor for me to be there to salute him and I'll give him the certificate from Leon Panetta. Last week, our community policing individuals had a very, very difficult week, but also I'm very happy to report that in a gated community, there was an individual who was going to ready to commit suicide, and our folks, I don't know who all was involved, but I know Bobby and all the folks back there, my heart goes out to you. Somehow you had the patience and everything to talk this guy out of, he did have a gun, talk him out of the bathroom, and he's now receiving medical attention, and our deputies are safe. So Thank you all so very, very much. And also, they had numerous drug busts. I know in one place they arrested 8 individuals, and then they had another drug bust. So they are active, and again, we thank you for everything you do. And Rick, thanks a lot for taking care of the mulch on Hickory Boulevard. Okay? That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Pete, what do you have for us today?
I want to say special thanks to Diane and Carl and everybody else that helped organize the town hall meeting last night with Congressman Trey Radel. It was a full house here. Thank you very much. The mayor and Councilman McIntosh and Schlachta and Longcart. I noticed if I missed anybody, but that was wonderful. I want to say a special thanks to, or congratulations to Hope Hospice for another amazing event this past weekend. Samira Beckwith and Bob Gillette, very involved with that organization. It's a wonderful organization. And this past Monday, the prayer breakfast, which went off very well again. Everybody in the mail, or everybody ratepayers, please send in your Bonita, your BSU election ballots. Have about another month or so for that. I'm not sure of the exact date, but they arrived Saturday, I believe. And just looking forward to the trip to Tallahassee to talk through several issues on behalf of our city.
Good deal. Good
Thanks.
deal. Thank you, sir. Martha.
We made an investment in Riverside Park, Depot Park, all that. It was put to really good use this weekend with the Bonita Springs Historical Society fish fry, biggest one ever, despite the fact that it was freezing cold out. And there was a concert in the park, and people came with their lawn chairs and their blankets. And the artist cottages had lots of traffic. So Mayor Ben and all past councils, thanks for investing in the park downtown. I'd like to ask council if I can bring forward an item for a recognition for a couple. The mayor probably remembers this, but I got a chin-up, Charlotte Harbor National Estuaries Program grant to provide, to create the litter patrol. Remember that? This is like 5 or 6 years ago. Well, I'd like to recognize at our maybe next meeting, March 20th, I guess, Al and Loretta Goldenberg. This program was give people a bucket with a decal on it that says, help Pete keep it neat, or Peter Pelican, and a picker. And they would adopt a block or a piece of roadway. And these folks did, and it was a really bad one. The corner of Royal and Pennsylvania was always trashed. And they have been taking care of this religiously for like 5 years, and I just want to recognize them. There are other people that are doing it, but not as well as they are. So they're really a terrific couple, and I'd like to recognize them maybe at the next meeting for just being great citizens of Bonita. I also want to congratulate our newest grandmother in town. Can you believe Councilwoman Martin's a grandma, and she's very happy. She's smiling like buckets, and I just want to say I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And you all get to see pictures, I'm sure. And the last one is, I hope that we can talk just a little bit more about paved roads. I don't want to pull it today because we had so much on our plate, but not today, maybe at the next meeting. I'm hearing from residents on my street that, hey, how much is it going to be? What's the deal? All the streets are being thrown into one, and some people are saying, well, wait a minute, why are we paying for the excess cost for the other streets? But the other thing is they don't know how the people that we've appointed as our key operators on the streets don't know how they're going to collect money when they don't have a definitive number. And if we collect, if this money is collected and put into a fund for us, can it be redistributed equitably back if there's too much? Something like that. So those are just some questions I hope I can work out with staff. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Bill, what do you got?
I'd like to wish everybody a happy day and a great weekend.
Good deal. Good deal. Maybe a little late in the game. We're going to have public comment in just a minute. If you have everybody wait. Steve, go ahead.
2 or 3 things. Just once in a while you run across an ordinance that doesn't make a lot of sense, but there are several restaurants here in town that like to allow their patrons to bring their pets, their dogs, and apparently we don't have an ordinance saying yes or no, but the state of Florida apparently has an ordinance that says no. So I'd like for the city staff to look and see what it would take to allow some restaurants, if they're interested in allowing to bring their dogs. I know this will raise an uproar for some people, but at the same time, I had a resident citizen business person ask me to do this, and I'm doing that. Secondly, Meals on Wheels serves 9,000 people a year, and many folks who are homebound don't recognize they can have that service if they simply call Meals on Wheels. It's a service available to you at minimal charge, and please use that service. And finally, on Saturday, I want to congratulate one of our staff members. On Saturday, we had the first annual dog walking and wagging event out at the rec center. There were approximately 50 of our canine friends, and Mandy Martin, who works with Nicole, put that event together by herself on her own at no cost to the city. There's no overtime involved, and so Mandy, thank you very much for considering our taxpayers and for taking care of that project on your own. So thank you very much.
Okay, so you would like the council to give approval for staff to go ahead and do some research on the dog
Yes, please.
ordinance? Okay, council, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Janet?
Okay, we have a very busy Saturday coming up, starting off with the Keep the Beautiful in Bonita cleanup, and that's at 9 o'clock at the Banyan Tree. Thank you to Rick for bringing that up before. He beat me to the punchline on that. Also, that evening is Despicable Me is the movie in the park at 7 p.m., so that'll be a lot of fun also. And then Friday, March 15th, this is the Art in Public Places big event, 5 p.m. at the Lyles Historic Plaza, where you can meet the artist, Dale Rogers, and that will be kind of the ribbon-cutting grand opening starting of the big dog display. And that's going to be pretty awesome, going right into that doggy wagon thing going on. Bonita Springs is doggy friendly. And then I just want to make sure that everybody has on their calendar, and I'm sure they already do, but I just want to give a big shout out to the Blues Fest, which is March 8th and 9th in Riverside Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to do one thing is to a special thanks to go out to our Bonita Springs own concert band. They are incredible.
Awesome.
Last Sunday there, I remember the first time they played for us, they were good. Now they are awesome. They are great. Anybody who gets a chance to go see them, it's amazing. So we'll be looking to recognize them again sometime soon. And at that, would the council like to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second.
Motion to approve the minutes, second. All sets, and roll call.
Councilman Slechta.
Aye.
Mayor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilman Simmons.
Aye.
Councilwoman Simons. Aye. Councilman Longcart.
Aye.
Councilman McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilwoman Martin.
Aye.
Okay, and at this time, public comment. Anyone wishing to speak at this time, please come forward.
Yes, Rick Steinmeier. Let's go back to Osprey Park. Well, the osprey hasn't nested there in probably 3 years. The telephone pole with the box on top is quite an eyesore, actually. The property hasn't been maintained. They were construction on the other side of the street, and contractors were parking all over it, and it's a little rutted up, but I fenced it off with tape. People still manage to dump on it, but and other information, history on that property, Neil Arnell, the guy across the street, sold that property to Richardson, received his commission for selling it. Neil Arnell lives across the street from 4 parcels, one being the city's parcel that is not up to code for land maintenance. Richardson's property is not up to code in land maintenance with the Brazilian peppers. The next 2 properties on the north side are not up to code with Brazilian peppers and Australian pines. These 4 properties have been reported to code enforcement, been reported to Nicole. They have not been maintained. I mean, the city's property has not been maintained. I don't know why. If I had a piece of property like that, I would have to cut the grass. I'd recommend you get in there with a weed whacker and cut the weeds and remove the Brazilian peppers that are on the city property. When they build, if Richardson also, the day after he bought this property, put up a for sale sign. So it sounds to me like he's a flipper. He's not an American citizen. I've got a lot of problems with giving away public property to anybody, since it was set there for a reason. I'm not necessarily saying you make a parking lot out of it, the neighbors don't want that, but who cares what the neighbors want? We'll do what we gotta do to make our people. We're not these people on Hickory Boulevard are not the only people. We got 45,000 people. Some of them need water access, and I'd say forget this whole deal of giving away our property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else now? Please come forward.
Hi, I'm Deborah McLean, the publisher of the Banana Peel. And first, I'd like to make a statement that I really believe we are coming out of the recession, that there are still problems, but we are in a more stable place. And I'd like to remind you that the intent of the operating ordinances on shelters and social services is to prevent a small group of 4 property owners and others with leftist leanings from establishing a social malignancy of homeless shelters and social services that will destroy our small seaside community. I question the cap of 30, and I suggest as we already hire deputies as needed, that we request the sheriff form a special detail to take an inventory of our true homeless people with photographs. The photographs are necessary to avoid double counts, and the advocacy groups, excuse me, I'm nervous. The advocacy groups cannot be trusted to do these counts at all because it perpetuates their jobs and it perpetuates their federal monies for these shelters. Do not use an advocacy group. All of the counts are negated just on that. Please use the Sheriff Department. I'm sure Mike Scott will help inform a detail for this. And take photographs. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time? Please come forward.
Here comes Al.
I was quick enough to beat Rick last time I was here. My name is Al Greenwood, and I own the Buffalo Chips restaurant, and I'd like to comment that, sorry, Mayor, you made an incorrect statement, and Carl agreed with you. When I came up to speak about the vending ordinance, the very first thing I said was, this is a very good document. The city should adopt it. That's the exact words I said and held the document up. I did not oppose this document. I opposed that the city allowed a use permit in a parking lot adjacent to my restaurant for a vendor. And there was no record of any of the state. I went the day before the meeting and I checked the use permit. There was a copy of a use permit in there. There was no business license. There was no agreement with the landlord. There was no agreement with a health department. There was no self-serve or safe-serve, any documentation in there. Since then, John Dahmer called me up and said, you can come in and see the documentation now. So he clarified that, and that's why I didn't come back. But that ordinance that you all passed was a very good ordinance. It said you cannot have a residential area 500 feet away set up. You can't be 2,500 feet from another vendor. My concern was the issue that if, say, Benson's grocery store allowed a vendor to set up in their parking lot to sell food, what right do you have as Survey Caf owner next door to restrict that? You must have some type of checks and balances not to allow someone to set up an adjacent parking lot. That was my concerns at that time. So I wanted to clarify that, Carl, that I didn't oppose, and the mayor was incorrect. Second thing.
That's okay, because I don't remember saying it, but go ahead.
I saw you on TV, and that's why I came in. You said, is there anyone else out here besides Al Greenwood to oppose this ordinance?
I did.
Carl turned around and looked.
Did I really?
And Carl turned around and looked and said, no, there is no one else.
Today?
Yes, I saw it on TV. You can look that up, too.
Okay, well, anyway,
Well,
okay.
no, but
Sorry.
I think the question was there anybody else other than Al Greenwood who had anything to say
He said
about
oppose
this?
The word was opposed.
Guilty.
Semantics. Okay.
Guilty.
Second thing, Lions Club. I'm president of Bonita Springs Lions Club, and we have an agreement with the city to do the Wednesdays market, and we also do the Saturdays market. And Farmer Mike used to be one of our stalwart members, and we would love to have Farmer Mike come back after a 2-year absence. But we have no room in the Wednesday market at the location it's at right now for him. He has written letters. We have talked about it in our board meeting. You had a member of the city come to me and asked me, is there a way possible we can get Mike into that Wednesday market? I said, you go over there and look, there is no room. They suggested that we locate in the back area of the parking lot, which has more room, but the vendors there said it's too far away from the city, from the street, so we did not have an area. I am for Farmer Mike. He's having a Harvest Fest on March 2nd. I'm going to cook fried green tomatoes and give them away for him. But I wanted the city and the people to know that the Lions Club did not oppose Farmer Mike. We didn't have an area open. The promenade didn't have an area. We moved it one time because of an art fest, and we went to Coconut Point. We allowed Farmer Mike to come to there. I hope, and I'm very grateful, the city allowed Farmer Mike to use city property to operate his own farmer's market, or something to that
Something to
nature.
that effect. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm happy that this problem has been resolved.
Good.
But the Lions Club, we donated $50,000 to help with a children's park last year. I just gave a check for $6,000 to Bonita Assistance Office. We do things like that with the funds that we get from these two markets. And we're not in business to restrict Farmer Mike. It's just we didn't have room, and we are charitable, and we like to donate monies and help the city.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Al. Anyone else this time, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry I couldn't be here last week. I was out of country.
That's all right.
I'd like to point out a logic flaw that you guys just, in the document you just voted out for first reading with the operational ordinance. Specifically, I'm concerned with paragraph 11, shelter size occupancy. As John explained, talking about the development of the 30 number was based on population. Population of Bonita Springs, population at Lee County, what sort of seasonal population do we have, how long is the seasonal population in effect. It's all based on population, and it applies to the totality of Bonita Springs. The wording here says, at any one facility. That's entirely illogical. How can we have something based on a facility basis that's based on the population total of Bonita Springs? This sentence needs to be rewritten and limit a maximum of 30 beds citywide, period. Then you're logically consistent. I also spent time, in my spare time, I developed a mathematical relationship to try to come up with another rationale for the 30. I come up with one that's in the mid-30s. And again, it's how many people are here, how long are they here, what's the difference of population between Bonita and Lee County, how many are homeless, all that sort of stuff. So it's a defendable number. We're in the right number,
Right.
but it applies citywide. It's not something per facility.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this time, please come forward. It's all right. I got all day. Come on.
Good morning. It's still morning. For the record, Kathy McGrath. The first thing I'd like to bring up.
That's fine. I forgot to say.
That's okay. I've been on the Waterways Advisory Committee for about 17 years now, and I discussed this with Audrey before. I want you all to know that if there is an easement to any waterway in any area of Lee County, the Lee County Commissioners have to vacate that, and prior to that, they come to the Waterways Advisory Committee, and I can tell you in 17 years, there's very, very few times that we recommend that they vacate an easement. And Ben, I can tell you this, there was an incident on Fort Myers Beach next to a condo, and they wanted it vacated. And exactly what was mentioned before, they said, police and fire, they said, no, what if there's a hurricane and we have to have access? So I'm sure this will be rehashed, but I just wanted to bring that up. That if there is an easement there, it would have to come, and then we would recommend, and then the county commissioners would have to vacate it. So, because once you give it up, as you said, it's gone forever. Now, one thing I forgot to mention last time, and this is just inconsequential, but if anybody needs mulch, don't forget, there's free mulch at the Imperial River Boat Ramp. You just go there and bring your stuff in. And Peter, thank you for bringing up the BSU election. By the way, I just checked with the head honcho back here. It has to be postmarked by March 12th. And yes, I am running. And please, when the ballots come, don't just think it's a piece of garbage and toss it. I can tell you, they send out about 21,000. and we're lucky to get back 4,000. A lot of people, for one reason or other, they don't know the people, or they don't care, or they think it's a piece of junk. So please vote. And with that, thank you, and congratulations again to my good friend Janet there with her 2 little precious twins. Yes, and to all of you, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else, please come forward.
Hi, Patricia Zimmerman, Cedar Creek, and I would like to agree with the other people that spoke that the homeless shelter should be limited to 1 homeless shelter in Bonita. In the original draft, I worked with the LPA. In the original draft was either a homeless shelter will be limited to a maximum of 30 residents for the entire city, excluding children under 6.
You may want to pull your microphone down a little bit. There you go.
Okay. Or a homeless shelter should be limited to a maximum of 30 residents at any one facility, excluding children under age 6, which was the one that they have chosen in the final draft. Or a homeless shelter, residents will be permitted based on the ratio of 1 homeless shelter per resident of 1,500, 1 per 1,500 residents. I say go back to A, limited to 1 of a maximum of 30 residents for the entire city, excluding children under 6. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else this is time, please come forward. Seeing none, thank you everyone, and council, nice job, staff, well done, and have a good day.